What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 4FG. Chapter 59 Akainu and Luffy's collision, swapping sides. Advertise here. Akainu walked up to Luffy. When the distance between the two sides was less than 2 meters, Akainu stopped. A Marine Admiral, a Pirate Nova. At this moment, the two are looking at each other like this. Akainu, who is taller, raised his chin slightly, his pupils turned down, and looked at Luffy with some contempt. And Luffy lowered his head slightly, his pupils turned upwards, and his gaze came out from under the slightly lowered straw hat, sharp and firm. An invisible spirit condensed around the bodies of the two of them. Akainu's side is dark red, with a frightening heat wave, like a land of magma. And on Luffy's side, the black and red Conqueror's Haki, like the substance, is swirling with no black smoke that can reach him. The two stared at each other for a moment. Next moment. A flame-like gleam flashed across Akainu's pupils. The fist with black gloves was raised high, and countless magmas that could swallow and melt everything erupted from his arms as if they were endless. Boom. The fiery dark red magma fist hit straight. A foot wearing a wooden slipper stepped directly on the magma. Invisible waves are at the center of the collision. In an instant, the whole world seemed to be divided into two colors. Generally, it is an indescribable dark red color, like the end of the world. On the other side is the normal world, as if there are invisible air waves repelling the hot magma. Terrible heat waves spread around. That's the shock aftermath from the collision. Run away, Sakazuki Admiral is here. The surrounding marine soldiers left here as if fleeing for their lives. This is a restricted area for the weak at the moment. They are all elite soldiers from various marine bases, but in this square now. Ordinary soldiers have no right to speak at all. All they can do is to escape from the battlefield of those monsters. Straw Hat Kid. Marco looked ahead as Luffy and Akainu collided and yelled. How could their admiral be stopped here? Boom. As if a flame was burning violently in an instant, the cyan flame instantly swept across Marco's body. A phoenix burning with blue flames, like a dreamlike creature, appeared in the sky, chirped softly, and flew towards the center where Akainu and Luffy collided. Ice cube, 2 thorny spears. A lazy voice sounded beside him. Pooh, 2 huge ice spears directly penetrated the phoenix in the sky. Captain Marco. The pirates of the Whitebeard pirates exclaimed. However, Marco was not seriously injured. He withdrew from the complete beast form, and stretched out his hand to pull out the 2 ice spears stuck in his chest. Blood did not shoot out from his chest, but the wound was burning with blue flames. Almost instantly, the flames burned, just like Logia, and the wound on Marco's chest completely disappeared. Marco the Phoenix, is this the ability of the Phoenix fruit of the Phantom Beast? A tall, thin man exuding a cold air came forward, looked at Marco and said. Zone fruit is generally inferior to Logia fruit, but there are exceptions. The phantom beasts in the zone fruit are no worse than the top Logia fruit, and even stronger. Just like now, the first team leader of the Whitebeard pirates, Marco's zone bird fruit, phantom beast species, and phoenix form. With the inflammation of regeneration, this terrifying and unimaginable self-healing ability. Even penetrating injuries and fatal injuries can be easily healed as long as the physical strength is sufficient. In the hands of the strong, this ability is even more powerful than the elementalization of the Logia fruit. Because the elementalization of the Logia fruit can be captured by the armament color, the wound hit by armament Haki still exists. Even the injuries caused by Haki can be easily healed by the regenerating blue flame of the phoenix. Aokiji. Marco looked at the tall and thin man in front of him with an ugly face, and said. It was this man who just stopped him from helping the Straw Hat Boy. We can't let that kid go on unscrupulously anymore, he has made enough noise. Aokiji scratched his head lazily, looked at Luffy in the distance, and said solemnly, although I don't know why they became so strong, but Mr. Sengoku is serious, and I can't just sit idly by. Quote. You criminals of the Whitebeard pirates, stay here honestly. Josie, Jinbei, Vista, you bring people to support Ace's younger brother, I will block Aokiji. Marco ignored Aokiji's words, and waved his hands at Joe's and the others, Yin said. I leave it to you, Marco. Joe's responded in a low voice. As for Aokiji, just looking at Vista, Joe's and the others passed by without making a move to stop them. It's useless, you don't even know, Marine's preparations for this war. Aokiji said calmly. Zzz. Countless beeps that broke through the air sounded behind Marco. The bright sword wave reached Joe's and the others in an instant. The dance of the roses. Vista swung his knife gracefully, and countless babiforms fluttered from the sky. The petals, which seemed to be weak and immature, collided with the sharp blade light, and violently slashed. Clang. The 3 knives collided in the violently spreading chopping waves, making a crisp sound of gold and iron. I heard a long time ago that Admiral Momosuke, Marine's alternate, is a great swordsman, and it's really rare to see a female great swordsman. Vista landed lightly. In front of him was an extremely tall woman, who was more than 2.5 meters tall, holding a famous knife. At this moment, she held the knife in both hands, and her vigor was astonishing. Marine alternate Admiral, Momosuke Gion. Foil Beasta, the famous swordsman in the New World, I've wanted to fight you for a long time. Momosuke has a gentle face, but on the battlefield, he didn't show it at all, instead he had a decisive temperament. Sorry, you can't help the Straw Hat Boy. This is arranged by Mr. Sengoku. If you go there, we will have a headache. An ugly short man stepped out of the smoke and dust with obscene steps and stood in front of Jinbei and Chaozi. If Kizaru is temperament, tone of voice, expression wretched words. Then the man in front of him is all-round wretched, with uncoordinated figure, ugly appearance, including words and deeds, which also give people an uncomfortable feeling. But neither Jinbei nor Chaozi had the slightest contempt for this man. Marine Alternate Admiral, T. Dolphin. Marine really thinks highly of us this time. Marco could also see the strong Marines appearing around him, and his face sank slightly. Count the previous Zephyr. Right now, there are well-known marine powerhouses on almost the entire sea. Almost all of them appeared on this battlefield. The Marine Pillar of the older generation, the Marine 3 Admiral of the new generation, and Admiral's successor. It can be said that for this war, Marine has really mobilized all its strength. Except for the former Marshal Kong, everything else is here. We were the ones who stopped you before, but now it's the other way around. Facing the strong Marines around him, Marco suddenly smiled, as if thinking of something funny. He said, "Didn't you notice? Aokiji. You've put us in a stronger position. Let's stay in prison for lying, Phoenix." Aokiji frowned slightly, stretched out his hand, the palm of the open finger was full of coldness, and pressed towards Marco. Ice freezing moment. The frightening cold air spread like a spherical light wave, and thick ice would form in an instant wherever it was shrouded by the light wave. Is it a lie? When the Straw Hat Boy shows his strength, you will know, Aokiji. The blue flames on Marco's body flourished, and one of his eyes was completely shrouded in the blue flames. He waved his arms that had turned into wings, and countless blue flame feathers rushed towards Aokiji like a tornado. Xingyanyan. The flame collided with the cold air instantly. As if a tornado rose from the flat ground, the tornado had two colors. The cyan flame and the white air conditioning were entangled, and then became invisible the next moment. Be careful, the healing flames can also kill people. Marco stood in the air, a large number of cyan flames suspended around his body, with a relaxed smile on his face. And on the other side, Foil, Josie also fought against Momosuke T. Dolphin. Although their strength is not as good as Marco's, they are also the strongest group under Admiral. One-on-one, it is no problem to hold Admiral down. Not to mention Marine's alternate Admiral. Although Admiral, Marine's backup, said that he has the strength of Admiral level. In fact, just like Foil, Joes and the others, the difference is the world. Jinbei. A thin voice sounded beside Jinbei. A black pair of scissors completely condensed by shadow cut towards Jinbei. But Jinbei just jumped neatly and avoided the black scissors. Moria. Jinbei looked at the man in front of him, posing in a Murloc karate pose. As Shichibukai, he has never fought against Moria, but at this moment, he must cross the obstacle of Moria. Give me your shadow, Jinbei, a Shichibukai's shadow, still very valuable. Moria held the black scissors and looked greedily at his flat road. If you can take it, take it. Jinbei was concentrating, and the surrounding water vapor seemed to be converging towards his palm. Boom. The ground was crushed by a powerful force, and Jinbei's robust body jumped high. I will accept your shadow, Ren. Scatter the bats. Moria smiled sharply, and with a wave of her hands, the shadow under her feet and the huge scissors in her hands instantly turned into black bats all over the sky, and rushed towards Jinbei. But Jinbei's face was calm, and his punching posture did not change at all. Murloc karate, Samahata. Invisible fluctuations spread around, and the black bats in the air froze for a moment. Jinbei's figure leapt out from the crowd of bats, and had already arrived in front of Moria. Ask for flowers. Fist. Boom. The heavy blow hit Moria's waist directly, and the terrifying power instantly smashed Moria's huge body into a C shape. Cough. Blood spurted from Moria's mouth. When Jinbei landed on the ground, Moria also fell to the ground with her eyes rolled white. Your practice is too poor, Mariah. Jinbei said lightly, and then continued towards Luffy. Rush to. However, boom. Huge, not inferior to Mariah's huge figure directly smashed in front of Jinbei. A shadow envelops Jinbei. A huge pressure completely different from Mariah directly appeared on Jinbei's body. Bartholomew. Bear. Jinbei raised his head and looked at the huge figure of Shang, his face became solemn. This is an opponent completely different from Mariah, not so easy to deal with. Hey, Empress, Doflamingo, are you two still making moves? The current situation is that both Marine and pirates have used their strength to ultimate. Almost everyone is fighting. The elite vice admirals of the headquarters, the remaining captains of the Whitebeard pirates, and the big pirates of the New World, the pirate captains under Whitebeard. There is one thing to say, except that the Marine soldiers suppressed the pirates in numbers. In terms of mid-level and high-level combat power, Marine has already fallen into a disadvantage. The number of elite vice admirals in this department is not as large as that of the pirate captains under Whitebeard. Moreover, those captains are stronger than the vice admiral, and they are not something they can easily stop. That's Shichibukai level, or close to Shichibukai level strength. MNMMMMMM. When Marine's casualties continued to expand. Finally, Marine couldn't help but blame Doflamingo and Empress Dowager. These two people are very strong. If they make a move, it will also play a certain role in improving the current battlefield. Are you ordering the concubine? The concubine responds to Shichibukai's call, but it does not mean that the concubine must obey your marine's orders. The Empress raised her head slightly, pointed at the Marine Rear Admiral who was speaking, and scolded. It's really difficult. Since it has been mentioned, then I will take action, chatter chatter chatter. Although he was taken aback by the sniper attack in the distance, Doflamingo was a lunatic after all, so he quickly put the matter aside. With his hands in his trouser pockets, he walked towards the battlefield with arrogant steps. Human beings, no matter how gentle they are, their bodies will definitely be brutal when they are asleep and excited when they see blood. Sure enough, only blood and death are the real entertainment. Doflamingo walked in the middle of the battlefield with a playful smile on his face. Doflamingo, go to hell. A pirate raised his knife and slashed at Doflamingo. However, the next moment, his body froze and he was completely unable to move. Not only him, the Marines and pirates around Doflamingo froze. The next moment, Marine raised his gun and shot at Marine, and the pirate drew his knife and slashed at the pirate. Their movements were as stiff as marionettes, with disbelieving expressions on their faces, and they aimed the killing at their comrades. What are you doing, Doflamingo? Which side are you on? There are manipulated Marine soldiers, shouting towards Doflamingo. Which side are you on? Doflamingo laughed as if hearing a funny question. Of course it's the side of justice. Then why did you attack us? Hey, Marine holding the banner of justice, do you think you can really represent justice? Doflamingo's tall body disappeared, and then suddenly appeared on the shoulder of a Marine soldier, stomping his body to the ground. Are pirates evil? Marines are righteous. That concept has been rewritten countless times. A kid who doesn't know what peace is has a completely different concept than a kid who doesn't know what war is. Only those who are at the top can make good and evil. Guess this place, is it righteous or evil now? No, not at all. Doflamingo stretched out his hands, as if embracing the entire battlefield full of gunpowder and blood, with a smile of enjoyment on his face. This place, at this moment, is absolutely neutral. Justice will prevail. Of course, only the victor is justice. Doflamingo is like a madman speaking among the dead. Greedily walking on the battlefield, breathing the bloody air, reaping the lives of Marines and pirates at will. To him, it doesn't matter, the current environment makes him enjoy it a little. In a disgusting world, destruction is the best. And just when he was killing with all his might. A steel ball passed across the face, and there was another bloodstain. On the Moby Dick in the distance, Usopp is holding a huge slingshot, another bullet with armament Haki attached. In the entire battlefield, although that person still feels the most disgusting. Usopp's attainments in knowledge and color are very strong, and the range of perception is very wide, which can easily cover the entire battlefield. Chapter 60 Eternal Hell, 5-Gear Shift. Advertise here. Just as the battle for naval headquarters was in full swing. The Impel prison is also drawing to a close. Blackbeard used the ability of Dark Fruit to hunt fruit, persuaded Shiryu Yuji, the warden of Imper's prison, to join him, and got the antidote of Magellan toxin. The entire Impel prison was in chaos at the moment. In order to hold Magellan back, Blackbeard opened up all the cells in Imper's prison. Countless vicious criminals poured out of the cell. The 6th floor, Eternal Hell. Gia ha 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 ha, let's fight, only the victors can join us. Blackbeard stood in the prison corridor. In front of him were opened cells one by one. The criminals that the world government wants to be wiped from the world are all released by Blackbeard at this moment. I'm not interested in playing these boring games with you. Crocodile unfastened the seastone handcuffs, glanced at Blackbeard with gloomy eyes, and said calmly. Thieves ha ha ha, isn't this the former Shichibukai crocodile? How did it appear in Impel? Blackbeard laughed outrageously. Looking dangerously at Crocodile, an ominous darkness appeared on his palm. Next to Blackbeard, Shiryu of the Rain was smoking a cigar, and his thumb had pushed away the famous sword Thunderstorm in his hand. Crocodile didn't say a word, and gravel began to appear around his body. Get out of the way, you're blocking the way. As Crocodile and Blackbeard confront each other. A tall and majestic figure appeared next to Blackbeard at some point. Just standing across from Buggy. The body types of the two are somewhat similar, and both of them have extremely strong upper body muscles. Didn't you hear Captain teach? Join. Boom. Buggy's words were directly smashed back. The terrifying power seemed to be able to shake the real Impel down, and a huge crack extended in the slightly dark 6th floor of the Eternal Hell. 850. If you are told to get out of the way, just get out of the way obediently, don't talk so nonsense. A majestic voice resounded, and the terrifying majestic aura made this already majestic man, standing in the dark environment, look like an evil ghost that chooses and devours people. He raised his hand, his fist was full of blood, and Buggy, who was so proud before, had completely lost consciousness. The members of the Blackbeard pirate group next to them wanted to make a move, but Blackbeard raised his hand with a serious face and stopped everyone. I didn't expect you to be here. It turned out to be captured by Marine. It's been a long time. Bullet, thief ha ha ha. I know you, you're that disgusting brat from the Whitebeard pirates. Bullet raised his chin, looked down at Blackbeard with a smile and said, your breath is still so annoying, I really want to punch you to death here. As Bullet's voice fell, a substantive aura spread from his body. Blackbeard's face froze, while Shiryu's whole body tensed up instantly. Every pore in this man's body seemed to be exuding a dangerous aura. If you can do it, let's try it, thief, ha ha ha. Blackbeard showed no sign of weakness. After the two sides confronted each other for a while, Bullet didn't make a move and slowly withdrew his courage. Blackbeard's strength is not weak, and his most important goal now is to leave this large prison in Impel. Aren't you going yet, Crocodile? Bullet paused, and said calmly to Crocodile in the cell. You guy, are you actually here? Crocodile walked out of the cell with a displeased face and walked towards Bullet. Captain, who is that guy? After the two walked away, Poison Q asked. Letting that kind of person leave in such a high-profile way is not at all the style of his own captain. Douglas Bullet, the real monster, anyway, that's not something we can handle right now. Blackbeard knows his strength well. Bullet, the kind of guy who could have tied Rayleigh decades ago, doesn't even bother him. That's a monster of a real monster, and a monster on the same level as the four emperors. Thank you, kid, otherwise, I really don't know when I will be able to leave this prison. A figure flew past Blackbeard in an instant, so fast that even Blackbeard couldn't react. By the time he realized it, the old man with the broken horn hat had already left. Blackbeard turned back, sweat dripping down his back. At this moment, he felt that it was a mistake for him to come to the 6th floor Eternal Hell to choose his subordinates. There are too many monsters here. Who is that? Blackbeard asked. Burn D World. Shiryu of the Rain also said solemnly. That guy is still alive, I thought he was dead a long time ago, he really has the vitality of a monster. Is that the Burn D World known as the World Destroyer? Blackbeard had been with Captain Whitebeard so long, seen and learned a lot. Burn D World, that's real, predates Luogia and Whitebeard's legendary pirates. At the beginning, his position in the sea and the fear of the world government. Now, it is the four emperors level. However, it was obvious that apart from Burn D World and Bullet, the remaining powerhouses in the 6th layer of Eternal Hell were almost all existences that Blackbeard could control. The oversized monsters are gone. Blackbeard looked at the dark cell in front of him, stretched his arms, and said loudly. Let's start. Fight, the winner will be able to enjoy this world. Boom. A huge roar sounded. The violent heat wave spread like a shock wave. No one dared to stay around. The ground was red and red, as if it was completely covered by magma, and there were flowing or cooling magma everywhere. The violent air wave pushed the colliding two people away. Half of Akainu's face has been completely covered by magma, and there is no slight injury on his body, but his clothes were obviously broken when he came into contact with elementalization. Opposite him, Luffy's face was calm, and there were slight burn marks on his fist. Akainu is strong. The threat to him is stronger than Kizaru. Because of his fruit ability, it is more destructive. In comparison, Kizaru's speed will be restrained by observation Haki, who can predict the future. And Akainu, he is a big hedgehog. The magma cover, no matter where you fight, is a head-to-head duel. If the armed color and conquerors are not strong enough, they will be burned by the high temperature of his lava. Facing Akainu, the only option is to use stronger attacks to completely suppress him. Do you only have this kind of strength? Straw Hat Boy, the execution time of Fire Fist is getting closer and closer. If you only have this kind of strength, you should obediently watch Fire Fist Ace die. Akainu was covered in magma, constantly stimulating Luffy's emotions with his words. He doesn't just hit head-on. He also likes to use some words to stimulate the opponent. During the battle, a slight mistake, with his ability, is an excellent opportunity for serious damage. After all, the attack power of his ability is also the top in the entire sea. Ace. Luffy looked towards the execution platform and whispered, You are right, Akainu. Akainu's eyes flickered slightly, and he felt something was wrong. The stimulation of words didn't seem to make the Straw Hat Boy lose his sense of proportion, but the aura in his body became deeper and stronger. A bad premonition filled his heart, and he felt as if he had released a real beast. You reminded me that I don't have that much time to waste here. Luffy pressed the straw hat, spread his legs apart, and collided his fists vigorously, and said with a smile. I want to get rid of you as soon as possible, Akainu. Change gear, 5th gear. A laughing voice fell. Luffy's huge body in 4th gear was shrinking and melting. Gentle, non-glare white light emerged from his body, and the rich white steam turned into ribbons and began to wrap around his body. Boom, boom, boom. The passionate drums sounded on the battlefield. No matter how strong the sound of fighting is, it can't cover up the heartbeat like a war drum. He. It was as if there was laughter, and the intense joy spread to the surroundings. The laughter seemed to be able to wash away the blood on the battlefield. It's that voice again. Hereby, the light collided with the black flame, and a streamer of fireworks exploded in the sky. Kizaru's figure condensed into photons, looking into the distance with a solemn expression. That's where the Straw Hat and Akainu fought, and that familiar white light appeared in Kizaru's eyes. It really is that gesture. Kizaru's eyes seemed to recall that powerful, exaggerated gesture. Is Luffy going all out? Sanji has only seen Luffy in this gesture once, and that was on the Moby Dick. But that collision, after all, did not make a shot and was blocked by Rayleigh. However, there is no doubt that this state of Luffy is absolutely the strongest posture. Bad premonition. Straw Hat. Hey, Garp, what kind of ability is this? Standing on the execution platform, Sengoku looked at the gentle but wide-spreading white light, and the drumbeat that seemed to enter his mind. He remembered the battle on the Sabaody archipelago that Kizaru had said. A special stance capable of hammering Admiral in half an hour. How do I know, Sengoku? Garp looked at Luffy below with a complicated expression. He watched helplessly as his grandson, Tough Admiral, did not lose the wind, and now this change occurred in his body, which he could not understand at all. Familiar and unfamiliar. Isn't that your grandson, Garp? Sengoku growled loudly. I want to know too, Sengoku, isn't Luffy my grandson? Garp also yelled at Sengoku. He also wanted to know why his grandson suddenly became so strong. The point is, he really doesn't know. He felt that he had missed decades. The one in front of him was Luffy, who had become the One Piece King, and went back to the past to save Ace. Other than that, he really couldn't explain it. Why is it that Luffy, who was still very weak in the 7 capitals of water, is now so strong? Damn it, to be dragged to such an extent by Straw Hat pirates. Sengoku gritted his teeth, but he couldn't make a move yet. Those two legends in the distance have been staring at him. Whitebeard, Rayleigh. Sengoku squeezed the two names out of his throat. Obviously it is their home field, but now they are passive as if this battlefield is Whitebeard's territory. Moby Dick aboard. Whitebeard stood at the bow, watching with great interest the Straw Hat boy who was changing rapidly. What a monster. No wonder you've done this for him, Rayleigh. In the white light, Whitebeard could clearly feel that the Straw Hat boy's already very powerful aura was still rising at this moment, as if there was no end to it. Unfortunately, the last match was interrupted by Rayleigh. Otherwise, Whitebeard is really curious about the full strength of the Straw Hat boy in this state. Of course, I am absolutely sure now that Luffy is the one Luogia is waiting for. He has the power to change the world. Rayleigh laughed. Then who do you think will win, that brat or Akainu? Whitebeard asked. Akainu is not weak. Among the 3 admirals, the one that Whitebeard likes the most is Jian. Whether it is Aokiji or Kizaru, they have the strength, but their will is too weak. Compared with Akainu, their persistence in winning and losing is far behind. Of course Luffy. Rayleigh smiled, his tone full of affirmation. Are you so sure? Akainu's strength is not that weak. You'll know after reading it, Luffy's real next day. Rayleigh said with a smile. He recalled the exaggerated, free-fighting style of Sabaody archipelago. Although immature, he also severely injured Kizaru in a short period of time, and now Luffy, after successive battles, his combat experience is far from what Kizaru had at that time. Immature. He will definitely shock everyone present. Gu la la la, if that's the case, that fellow Sengoku will have a headache. Whitebeard laughed, clenched the naginata in his hand, and looked at Sengoku on the execution platform in the distance, and Garp beside him. However, the two of us should be dispatched soon. The war is about to reach its peak. Whitebeard's eyes were sharp, and he was keenly aware that at this moment in the war, the fragile balance would be broken at any time. And the key to breaking the balance lies in the Straw Hat boy who is full of unknowns. Whether it's the Straw Hat kid beating Akainu, or Akainu beating the Straw Hat mobs. When that moment appears, the entire battlefield will be sublimated in intensity in an instant. And the chance to rescue Ace was at that time. I really miss it. It's been 20 years since I played against Garp. Rayleigh raised the silver flagon and drank the wine inside, with a nostalgic smile on his face. Square in front of the execution platform. Luffy's gear change seems to take a long time, but it is actually just a few seconds. Akainu didn't want to interrupt. He is not good at speed. No matter what form the opponent is in, he just needs to face it head on. Of course, to be honest, he couldn't interrupt either. In the process of changing from 4th to 5th, Luffy is not at the mercy of others. Under observation Haki 1.0, who can predict the future, almost no one can interrupt his shifting in this sea. Moreover, in the process of changing gears, he actually already has the characteristics of 5th gear, and his defense is countless times stronger than that of 4th gear. That is the new form of the Straw Hat Kid. It is also the form that defeated Pelusalino. Sengoku looked serious. The boy in the straw hat in the distance has completely turned white from head to toe, clothes, and hair. The whole person exudes a slight white light, like a legendary god. This form is extremely eye-catching, and it is impressive at first glance, and it will never be forgotten. However, it doesn't look as good as the posture just now. Akainu looked at Luffy, and challenged with disdain. However, the voice fell, and in an instant, he had lost Luffy's figure. Boom. A powerful fist hit him directly in the face. Conqueror's winding, armed color winding, double winding fist, plus, that is stronger than the previous 4 gears. Bang bang bang. Akainu's whole body is like a cannonball. Smashed through countless walls. He, Akainu, let's get serious, let's have a real fight. Luffy laughed. Boom. Unlike Luffy's unconcealable smile, Akainu pushed away the huge stones on his body and stood up with a very gloomy expression. There was a large abrasion on the left side of his face and blood was coming from the corner of his mouth. It was the injury from that punch just now, and this was the most serious injury the Straw Hat Boy had suffered since he had been fighting for so long. However, At this moment, he couldn't even care about the injury at the corner of his mouth. Straw Hat Boy's 5th gear completely exceeded his expectations. Speed, power, and even Haki's strength to the next level. The almost comprehensive increase shocked Zhu Tian a little. The Straw Hat is a monster. This 5th gear can only be said to be a monster among monsters. Chapter 61. Akainu on Gear 5, Whitebeard joins the fight. Advertise here. Ha 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 ha. The grinning Straw Hat Boy, even in this tragic battlefield, burst out with an optimistic and happy mood. And this kind of emotion has a very strong appeal. It seems that people can't help but smile. However, this kind of appeal did not play any role for Akainu, who was on the opposite side. On the contrary, he could only feel the growing coldness in his heart. Looking in front of him, the boy in the straw hat who looked like a god who came out of a myth, Akainu's originally cold face became more and more ugly. There are even some violent emotions. Straw Hat Boy, you, a pirate with evil blood, should be wiped out completely. Akainu roared. Fiery dark red magma performed from his body. Lava, volcano. It is as powerful as a volcanic eruption. Akainu's lower body completely turned into dark red magma, gushing out, pushing his body towards Luffy quickly. The raised fist grew rapidly and was covered by layers of seemingly endless magma, forming a huge fist that could penetrate the sky. With terrifying heat, it smashed towards Luffy Wolf. It's a terrible attack. It's terrible. It's admiral. Luffy looked at the huge fist falling from the sky with an exaggerated tone, and he could feel the terrifying high temperature in the dark, even standing on the ground. However, the mouth said terrible. But Luffy looked at the fists falling in the sky as if looking at the scenery, without any movement. Only when the fist was about to hit the body completely, Luffy seemed to have just discovered the attack, and hurriedly inserted his hand into the ground, and then lifted it vigorously. Rubber rubber, bounce. It seemed that the name of the move was chosen randomly, and the expression on his face was not that serious. But it's such a casual move. The whole piece of ground in front of Luffy was instantly agitated, fluctuating like rubber, and then blocked in front of Luffy like a blanket. Boom. The huge magma fist hit the rubber ground directly head-on. However, the ground was only exaggeratedly recessed inward, without any sign of being melted or cracked. Instead, when the dent hit by the magma fist reaches a limit state of 26, it rebounds suddenly with huge elasticity and good ductility. The fiery magma went back the same way and hit Akainu, who was in the air. Boom. The impact of the rebounded magma brought Akainu's whole body to the ground, turning a large area of the ground into a magma floor, like a crater. Straw Hat Kid. A figure condensed from the dark red magma, it was Akainu. He didn't suffer any damage. After all, there wasn't any armament Haki attached to the magma that just bounced back. He is a magma man himself, so it is naturally impossible for him to be injured by magma. However, that sense of humiliation was too strong. His own attack was bounced back, and he was hit by his own attack. But even with the anger rising in his heart, Akainu is still calmly analyzing the abilities and characteristics of the Straw Hat Boy in this state. The transformation ability is completely different from the previous 4th gear. It is not like Paramesh's ability, but more like Zone's transformation ability. There is an essential change. Akainu recalls Straw Hat's transformation process. In the previous 4th gear, he could easily see the reason. The elasticity of rubber and the combination of armed colors are essentially the characteristics of rubber fruit. But now, it doesn't seem like the use of characteristics, it is obviously the original body shape, but the weird wrist strength and speed improvement should not be the ability of Paramesha rubber fruit at all. The improvement of the 4th gear should be the limit of rubber fruit. However, the ability to turn the ground into rubber just now should indeed be the awakening ability of rubber fruit, which is in line with the assimilation ability of Paramesha fruit awakening. Akainu analyzed calmly in his heart. He always felt that something was wrong. Why don't you keep attacking? It's boring, Akainu. Luffy danced happily, as if he couldn't rest for a moment, and he laughed. In this state, it seems that all the negative emotions have disappeared, only positive and happy positive emotions. Even on the battlefield, even with Ace by your side. Always be happy and enjoy fighting. Since you don't make a move, then I'm going to make a move, ha ha ha. After Luffy finished speaking, he laughed and disappeared in place. His figure instantly appeared above Akainu. The legs are raised high and stretched. Rubber rubber, tomahawk, so fast. Even though Akainu was prepared for Luffy's speed, it still felt too fast. But fortunately, with the preparations, under the color of knowledge, I can still catch it. Great eruption. A huge column of magma fire spewed out from his body. However, the Straw Hat Boy's leg is constantly getting bigger, it seems to be getting bigger as he falls. A huge shadow instantly enveloped the entire Akainu below. Boom. The soles of the feet, which were even bigger than those of the giants, stepped on them directly, crushing the pillar of magma and fire directly. Pong. It was like stepping a big foot into a puddle. Countless viscous magma around it sputtered out in large swaths like water droplets. Run away. The fight between Straw Hat and Sakazuki Admiral has expanded again. Some marine soldiers escaped for their lives, not only marines, but also pirates. Not everyone has awakened armament Haki. Not everyone can defend against magma through armament Haki. Around the battle between Luffy and Akainu, it was as if a rain of magma was falling. No life dares to approach it at all. Even Jinbei, Beasta and the others who were madly leaning over there before couldn't help but retreat. No way, they are also mortal bodies, and they don't want to touch the magma falling from the sky. It's hot. Luffy's feet shrunk in an instant, and he hugged his feet and screamed in the sky. His slippers had fallen off a long time ago, and at this moment, the soles of his feet were directly on the magma, and the entire soles of his feet were red. However, compared to the screams of the Straw Hat Boy, when people saw Akainu, they were surprised. Cough cough. Akainu knelt on the magma, coughing lightly, the dripping dark red magma mixed with blood on his face. He felt as if his whole body had been stepped on by countless giants. That kick just now had armor color and Conqueror's Haki attached. What the hell is that? Akainu couldn't understand Luffy's attack at all. Shouldn't the Straw Hat's attack be to blow air into his body to expand his strength and attack range? What was that just now? There was no blowing at all, as if with a thought, the body became bigger at will. Damn it, Akainu. Akainu, who was more miserable here, didn't speak yet, while Luffy over there was like a child, getting angry directly. An undisguised expression of anger appeared on his face, and it was even more exaggerated. I'm going to beat you up, Akainu. Luffy yelled angrily. Then the muscles of the legs became bigger instantly, like balloons. A huge hemispherical pit appeared exaggeratedly on the ground where he was. The dense cracks spread towards the surroundings, and the smoke and dust spread towards the surroundings like a huge ring. Bang bang bang. Countless white sonic boom clouds spread out in a circular shape and exploded in the sky. Luffy's speed is so fast that even an observation Haki is hard to catch. Akainu didn't have time to react at all. A terrifying sense of oppression has appeared behind him. He didn't need to look back, he seemed to be able to see the figure of the Straw Hat Boy with his fist raised in anger. Boom. The invisible conquerors entangled, crushing Akainu's head instantly. The terrifying power beats the air into columns, like air waves. In an instant, Akainu's head hit the ground. Even with some of the power removed from elementalization, he spurted out blood in an instant. Rubber rubber. Hit. Ah ah ah. Luffy roared. His fists were like a rainstorm, his fists were almost invisible, only the position of his shoulders could be seen, turning into an afterimage. It was as if there were invisible dense attacks hitting the ground. The entire earth was shaking, and huge cracks appeared on the earth. Dark Hound. During Luffy's random beating, Akainu gritted his teeth and roared, his whole body instantly turned into a dark red hunting dog, slender and extremely fast, and hit Luffy's face. I've seen through everything about you. In Luffy's eyes, a white light flashed, his head turned sideways instantly, and the white light in his pupils streaked across the air. The dark red magma hound brushed against Luffy's face, and the high temperature made his cheeks slightly red. Just as the dark red hound passed through Luffy's figure and was about to turn into a normal form to distance itself, a white lighted hand directly grabbed the hound forcefully. Then he pulled back hard. The high temperature and armed color of the magma broke out violent friction in an instant. Grabbing at such a close range, the armed color only supported for a moment before being broken through, and Luffy's palm instantly turned black, but he pulled it back forcefully as if he didn't feel any pain. Rubber rubber, King of the Apes. The left hand pulled back the magma-formed Akainu, the fist of the right hand swelled and became larger in an instant, armament Haki solidified, and the fist was deeply retracted into the wrist. There was a tooth-piercing squeezing sound. At the moment of Akainu's return, he slammed into his dog's face. Boom. The one-punch Ape King at such a close distance. At the 5th gear level, the 4th gear is added with elastic reinforcement to increase the force area. Boom. Countless sonic booms exploded radially, like a storm on the flat ground. In front of Luffy's fist, there was a horizontal tornado of white smoke and dust. Akainu directly smashed into the thick protective wall, smashing huge cracks in the protective wall. Call. Luffy gasped heavily. With his current physical strength, he can use 4th gear for a long time. But once he entered the 5th gear state, his physical strength would pass at a speed beyond ordinary people's imagination, just like now. Obviously only entered the 5th gear for a few minutes, he seemed to have experienced a fierce battle. But the power of the 5th gear is beyond doubt. Facing Akainu in the 4th gear, whether he is in the Snake Man state or the Elastic Man state, he is faintly at a disadvantage. But in the 5th gear state, he can easily crush Akainu and crush Akainu no matter in terms of strength or speed. Sakazuki Admiral was defeated. Really? Did that Straw Hat Kid actually solve an admiral so quickly? As Sakazuki already defeated, Kizaru in the distance can also hear the shouts of the marine soldiers collapsing in the distance. But when he heard the news, although his heart sank, he did not doubt the credibility of the news. Because, there is no one present who understands the strength of the Straw Hat Kid better than him. Really entering that state, his strength surpasses anyone on the sea. Even Sakazuki, there is nothing but defeat. Hateful. Sengoku on the execution platform looked at the Straw Hat Boy below, with a slight golden light on his face. He couldn't help but want to make a move. The strength of the Straw Hat Boy in this new state far exceeded everyone's imagination. Even Sengoku, who had heard Kizaru's story, was deeply shocked at the moment. Admiral, who was able to fight with the sky as a unit, was crushed and beaten in just a few minutes, and now he was beaten like this. Don't worry, Sengoku. Garp looked at the place where Akainu fell, and the smoke that enveloped the place, and whispered, Sakazuki is not someone who is easy to deal with. Garp's voice just fell. Boom. Countless magma poured out from the protective wall. The bright magma illuminates everything, and under the dark cloud-shrouded sky, this battlefield is particularly obvious. Akainu leaned on the wall and stood up slowly. The huge hole in the protective wall he smashed out seems to have turned into a crater at this moment. The turbulent magma gathered under the feet, and the hard stone above the head turned into 280 magma and dripped down. At Akainu's feet, it was like a river of magma appeared, spreading outward. Straw Hat Boy, you bastard, it really hurts. Akainu leaned on the wall, panting slightly. His clothes were completely torn, blood was overflowing from his mouth and nose, and a large stream of blood gushed out from his forehead, leaving a long bloodstain on his face. Really, Admiral's vitality is really like a monster. Luffy couldn't help but sighed softly. He originally thought that he was already very resistant to beatings, but every time he played against Admiral, he could feel that they were like Xiaoqiang from immune to death. So is Kizaru, and so is Akainu. He entered the 5th gear, and even the destructive self felt scared, but he punched Akainu in the face with all his strength, and the opponent now seemed to be slightly panting and embarrassed. It doesn't look like it hurts at all. However, no matter how many times, I will beat you until I completely defeat you. A smile appeared on Luffy's face, his hands clenched into fists, his face was still full of fighting spirit, just like his heartbeat like a drum. Let me tell you, Straw Hat, how the top Logia powerhouse fights. Akainu whispered. Under his feet, a large amount of magma spewed out, turning everything around it into a place of magma. In the blink of an eye, the magma spread to Luffy's feet like a river. The top Logia ability user has a large-scale attack that is difficult for other fruit ability users, as well as a super terrain-changing ability. Just like now, Akainu wants to turn everything here into magma. Completely turn this place into your own home field. This is the final battle, go in. Looking at the high-temperature magma spreading around, Luffy's expression did not change at all, and he was still full of high-spirited smiles, and said to Akainu. On the Moby Dick in the distance. Whitebeard's expression changed, and he laughed boldly. It's our old guy's turn to play, Rayleigh. Boom. Whitebeard jumped off the bow, stepped on the ice with his majestic body, a wave of air spread towards the surroundings instantly, and the entire ice was slightly shaken, countless huge cracks appeared. Have you felt the changes in the battlefield? Rayleigh couldn't judge, but he believed in Whitebeard's judgment, followed suit, and jumped off lightly. Father is at war. The appearance of Whitebeard gave great encouragement to all the pirates on the ice. Even though Luffy displayed such terrifying strength, his reputation on the entire battlefield still cannot be compared with that of Whitebeard. After all, he is a living legend that has existed in the sea for decades. Ozzy, get out of the way. Whitebeard growled loudly. Daddy. Hearing Whitebeard's voice, Oz quickly split the 2 giant vice admirals with a knife, and then quickly opened the huge body. Zihai, seeing that Bai Yizi was accumulating energy, quickly stepped out of the way. As if avoiding some kind of terrible natural disaster. Chapter 62 Marines Heroes, Monsters of Old Times. Advertise here. The members of the Whitebeard pirates scrambled and scrambled away. On the contrary, it was Marine soldiers, who were stunned in place with a puzzled expression on their faces. Get the hell out of here, Marine brats, goo. Whitebeard laughed boldly. Holding the naginata in his left hand and turning his back to his back, he leapt high, his right arm muscle stretched out, and his thick arm directly punched the air in front of him. The originally invisible air, in front of Whitebeard, is like a solid crystal. An invisible wave passed by. Click, click, a huge silver-white crack appeared in front of Whitebeard. The atmosphere shattered as if peeled off, and spider-web-like cracks extended to the entire sky. Boom. The next moment, a dull and loud noise erupted. A transparent spherical shock wave is rapidly spreading in front of Whitebeard. A group of figures, under the shock wave of the vibration, were swept away like fallen leaves. Whether it is a huge ice block, or a stone falling from a shattered protective wall, or other buildings, it is in front of the poison wave activated by the poisonous fruit ability user. They were all easily destroyed like chickens and dogs. In just an instant, a wide passageway appeared in front of Whitebeard on the densely populated ice battlefield. The destructive power of the strongest man in the world can be seen from Madara. No matter how many times I've seen it, I can't help but marvel at your destructive power. Rayleigh looked very unremarkable next to Whitebeard, said at the moment. There are many people in the sea whose strength is close to that of Whitebeard, or close to the current old Whitebeard. But this kind of destructive power, and the scope of destruction, few people can match. Shocking enough to instantly destroy the morale of most soldiers. Whitebeard, this ability, seems to be born for destruction. Whitebeard. Sengoku's face was very ugly. He looked at Whitebeard who was participating in the battle in the distance, and the fear in his eyes almost overflowed. When he was young and admiral, he fought Whitebeard too many times, and he knew how powerful this man was. This man is no less inferior to Luo Jia. It's just because the ambition is not as strong as Luo Jia, so the degree of danger is not as long as Luo Jia. This war, for a Whitebeard. Sengoku had launched Shichibukai's forced call and 3 admirals' full manpower before, even pulling back both Suru and Garp. You know, even without the Straw Hats and Pluton Rayleigh. This kind of power is definitely more than 80% of Marine's power. The next two substitutes, Admiral and Zephyr, are temporarily transferred back in order to deal with the Straw Hat Boys. In fact, when the Straw Hat Pirates erupted with such terrifying power, Sengoku's heart had already sunk to the bottom. Because most of the power held back by the Straw Hat Pirates was prepared for Whitebeard alone. And now, with Whitebeard in the fray, Sengoku unexpectedly found that he had no power at hand to stop Whitebeard. Admiral-level combat power has been blocked. And it seems that there is no winner or loser in a short period of time. There is only one Garp around, and the Crane. However, Crane's strength is much worse than that of Whitebeard and Rayleigh. Garp is now in a state of confusion again. He himself was the last line of defense in front of Fire Fist Ace, and he couldn't easily move out. Sengoku could only watch helplessly, as Whitebeard seemed to be in no man's land. Raising his hand, a large group of marine soldiers fluttered like fallen leaves. In such a short time, Whitebeard had rushed to the execution square. At such a close distance, the loud shouts between the two sides can be heard. Even in this noisy battlefield. Gu la la la, Sengoku. Whitebeard laughed. It was in stark contrast to Sengoku's gloomy expression. Obviously it's Marine's home game, but now, the offense and defense have changed. The current initiative is entirely on Whitebeard's side. They have two legendary battle strengths that are not restricted in the slightest. It can easily break the fragile balance on the battlefield. The moment Whitebeard and Pluden Rayleigh appeared on the square, all the powerhouses on Marine's side couldn't help but pause slightly, almost revealing their flaws. No way. This is war, not a man-to-man battle. If a combined attack can be formed, Marines will directly attack them, let alone pirates. Garp, how long are you going to be decadent? It's too late, Sengoku yelled. Old man. Ace also looked at Garp, his lips trembling, as if he wanted something. But he still didn't say it after all, but turned his head back silently. He knew that Garp was a very emotional person. Even at this moment, he only needs to call out Grandpa. Even if Garp doesn't directly rescue him, he can still fall into deeper confusion. The confusion of a Marine's top combat power is enough to have a huge impact on the current situation that maintains a fragile balance. But in the end, Ace still didn't say anything to disturb Garp. It is precisely because he knows Garp's entanglement and Garp's suffering that he didn't say anything. Including when he was pushed from the deep-sea prison to this execution platform, until now, he has tried his best not to talk to Garp. The pirate's path was chosen by himself. When he chose this path, he knew that this path might conflict with Garp's path, and he knew that sooner or later there might be such a day. If a man makes a choice, he will bear all the consequences by himself. Maybe when it is time to face the result, you will regret it and regret it. But he will never use his own ending at the last moment to long for others and torment others, especially his relatives. This is his pride. He can understand all the choices Garp is making now. That is also his own choice, he will not do all the interference. Hello, Garp, Sengoku shouted. Whitebeard and Rayleigh were getting closer and closer to the battle. I see. Veins popped up on Garp's forehead, and his face was extremely ugly. However, he has already made his final choice. Whoosh. Garp's figure instantly disappeared on the execution platform. Boom. On the battlefield in the distance, a huge cloud of smoke rose. Cracks run across the ground. If you want to trample on justice, then try to step over me. Don't be too arrogant, pirates. Garp's roar resounded throughout the battlefield. Marine's morale, which has been refunding fees since the beginning of the war, suddenly skyrocketed at this moment. Standing there. But Marine's hero. The man who pushed the one-piece Gordy Luogia into a corner several times. As long as he makes a move, he is just a pirate. Come on, follow Vice Admiral Garp. A passionate roar sounded on the battlefield. In terms of positions, Garp and Sengoku are not comparable. But in terms of prestige, and in terms of status among the middle and lower ranks of Marine, Garp is definitely number one. His legendary life, his uninhibited character, and his mild-mannered personality among Marines, he has a very high status in the hearts of Marine soldiers. Compared to Sengoku, Sengoku is like an awe-inspiring leader, and Garp is an idol and a banner of the road of justice in their hearts. Actually tell the truth, Garp is also much more popular than Sengoku in the top combat power. Aokiji is his little fanboy, and the two alternate admirals have a close relationship with him. Mr. Garp, you are as handsome as ever. Aokiji, who was fighting Marco, also heard Garp's roar at this moment. His lazy eyes changed, and his whole temperament underwent a huge change. Marco's senses are the deepest. This lazy, slightly confused admiral seemed to have lost his confusion at this moment, and the oppressive feeling in his body instantly became stronger. Aokiji, you go to assist Garp, block Whitebeard and them, and I will block the Phoenix. Behind Aokiji, an old voice sounded. Crane Vice Admiral. Aokiji turned around and saw the person coming, with respect in his tone. Crane, Garp, and Sengoku are strong men in the same period. Although they are not as strong as Mr. Sengoku Garp, they have a very high status and great contributions. I'm old, I can't stop those two monsters anymore, I can only ask you. Crane said calmly. Her strength when she was young was barely enough to reach the admiral level, let alone when she was old. It is impossible to be the opponent of Whitebeard and Rayleigh. Facing those two monsters, it may be very difficult to hold back, and only Aokiji, a powerful admiral who is in his prime, can stand in front of that old monster. I see. There is no confusion in Aokiji's eyes at this moment, as if he has returned to the attitude of a passionate young man before Ohara. After Ohara, there has been deep confusion in his heart. He didn't know why he was fighting. The higher his position, the more he saw, the justice in his heart was covered with more dust, making it difficult for people to see clearly everything he wanted to do. But, just now, Mr. Garp's roar briefly dispelled his confusion. He doesn't need to think about so many things at the moment, he just needs to concentrate on facing the war, just like at that time, following Mr. Garp's figure. As for his confusion, everything will end in this war, and he will find an answer by himself. Don't try to bother Papa, Aokiji. When Marco saw Aokiji leave, he waved his blue wings instantly and flew towards Aokiji. However, a thin and withered figure appeared in front of him in an instant, and those withered old hands touched his body. Obviously light and without any power, but a very dangerous premonition appeared in Marco's heart. If touched, the battle is lost. The cyan flames flourished, and Marco suddenly turned back in the air. Let me be your opponent, Phoenix Marco. Crane calmly said. The current battlefield is too chaotic, we can't let you pirates continue to be unscrupulous. Marine's power is undoubtedly greater than that of pirates. Just under the interference of the Straw Hat Boy, they messed up. With the strong being held back, it seemed like Marine was completely at a disadvantage. Actually, it's just a slight adjustment between her and Aokiji. The battlefield that seemed to be collapsing because of Whitebeard and Rayleigh's participation in the battle just now regained its balance in an instant. Gu Lala, isn't this Garp? It's been a long time. Whitebeard's eyes revealed seriousness, but he still had a smile on his face. Whitebeard, it was a real fight against you. That's right, in that era of legends, you, Luogia, and Golden Lion were listed as the top 3 legendary pirates. Luogia and I are old rivals, and we also sent Golden Lion to prison with our own hands. You are the only one who has allowed you to act unscrupulously in this sea for so many years. Garp's fists were clenched and creaked, and Ultimate's expression turned ugly. He is very angry now. Although he made a choice, the pain has been lingering in his heart. He now needs a hearty battle to forget the pain of choosing between justice and family affection. Garp stomped on the ground, shaved quickly, and accompanied by Moonwalk in the air, he came to Whitebeard in an instant, and punched Whitebeard directly with his huge fist. After so many years, aren't you a little bit carried away? Whitebeard. Garp roared loudly, and the invisible conquerors and armed colors were wrapped around his fist, and he punched out. The terrifying power made the air stagnate. Stop putting gold on your face. Garp. Whitebeard laughed, holding the naginata tightly with one hand, and grabbed the sky with the other, making a fist. It was as if the air had been condensed into crystals and shrouded around the fist. A transparent white halo, condensed into a spherical shape, shrouded around the fist. Next moment, it is a collision that is enough to make the whole world quiet. The distorted air fluctuated between the fists of the two of them, and the two of them maintained their punching posture at this moment, as if time had stopped. Next moment, the bright light began to explode violently from their positions. The ground is full of cracks, extending hundreds of meters in an instant, and the cracks are full of light. Boom. The shock waves seemed to spread upwards from the ground. In the bright light waves, a large number of hard bricks and stones on the ground were shaken up, and then turned into ashes in the white light waves. The white light waves expanded like a huge hemisphere, engulfing the figures of Whitebeard and Garp. Marineford is shaking and the whole island is taking over. Huge cracks in naval headquarters begin to grow. Cracks big enough to swallow a man with ease begin to appear on the island. The ice in the distance swayed, and the sea in the distance was rough, mixed with the humming of sea kings. Dad is serious, pay attention to the cracks in the ground. There are members of the Whitebeard pirates, the experienced one reminded loudly. The sky is cracked. Some marine soldiers looked at the sky in shock. The sky over Marineford, the sky covered by thick black clouds due to the Battle of the Strong, at this moment a huge crack broke out from the middle. The terrifying vision shocked everyone. This is the tongue of the world's strongest man, the strongest king of One Piece and the strongest among marines. As destructive as a natural disaster. This is a vision that has never appeared in any battle before, and it is terrifying and makes people tremble. What a terrifying monster. Garp, at this age, he can still explode with such terrifying strength. Rayleigh couldn't help but marvel. He thought he was well maintained, and saw Garp. His maintenance of the body is no less than his own, even better. Except that the hair is completely white, everything else is actually the same as it was 20 years ago. Whitebeard. After watching Garp, Rayleigh looked at Whitebeard in the bright light waves generated by the collision, with a complicated look on his face. It's different from Garp, who is always at full strength. Whitebeard was really desperate at the moment. No way, his physical condition is really bad. The dark wounds from the long-term battle made his physical condition deteriorate to a limit. He let Luffy play Conquerors before, because of his physical fitness, using Conquerors is a very big burden. Add to that the effects of heart disease on the body. He is able to face Garp without losing the wind now, because he is already strong enough to resist these negative influences. The waves of light dissipated. Garp and Whitebeard looked as usual. It seemed that the earth-shattering collision just now was just ordinary for them. Is this the only strength? Garp, what marine hero? Luogia just doesn't want to fight with you. Do you really think that you can push Luogia into a corner? Whitebeard laughed and said, you know it well, Luogia, it wasn't you who caught it at all, but the government put the credit for this incident on your head. Whitebeard. Garp growled angrily. The matter of Luogia was originally a problem for him. He and Luogia are both enemies and friends, and cherish each other. What he regrets the most is that Luogia suffers from a terminal illness and finally surrendered himself instead of being arrested by him. At this moment, Whitebeard revealed this point, which undoubtedly poured oil on Garp's already unhappy mood. Chapter 63 Go to the bottom of the sea for me, Akainu. Advertise here. Boom boom boom. A huge shock wave exploded over Marineford. The sky was directly torn apart by the terrifying momentum. The battle between Whitebeard and Garp became the focus on the battlefield at this moment. In their battle, there is no speed, only a frontal collision of pure strength. One is the earthquake man with the strongest destructive power, and the other is an existence that has been pushed to the pinnacle of the armed conqueror's Haki. In every confrontation, there is only pure violence. There was a low crashing sound, and the aftermath of the terrifying shock wave. The two monsters from the old era let everyone see how terrifying the buried era was. Are those two old men really 70 or 80 years old? Clang. Chu Shui and third generation ghost completely held up Dahe Daoe, and Hawkeye and Zoro were approaching now. Except for the full-scale battle of Haki's swordsmanship at the beginning. Now Zoro and Hawkeye are just a pure swordsmanship competition, and the battle is not so bloody. After all, whether it is Hawkeye's position or Zoro's position, there is no need for both sides to fight to the death. Even speaking, at the restaurant on the sea back then, Hawkeye was merciful, not only gave Zoro a little advice, but also mercifully gave Zoro a chance to challenge again. Moreover, Zoro is very clear about his current goal, and it is his task to hold back Hawkeye, a powerhouse at the grand prize level. Therefore, when the two sides have friendship, the battle between the two of them is the most relaxed, there is no life-threatening, it is just the exchange of two swordsmen. Of course, this is also because both Zoro and Hawkeye have realized that the difference in sword skills between the two of them is very small. If you really want to tell the winner, this is not a good battlefield, and the timing is not right. With a tacit understanding, it also led to them being able to watch other people's battles while fighting at the moment. And it was Zoro who expressed emotion. Whitebeard and Garp, these two old men who are at least 70 years old, are fighting the loudest at this moment. The most courageous and the most passionate. Let these young people feel ashamed. After all, those two have survived from that era full of legends to this day, and the hero Garp, 4 Emperors Whitebeard, even in that old era, was the man who stood at the top. With a calm face, Hawkeye explained to Zoro. If you remove the halo of One Piece King Luogia's conquest of the Grand Line, any of these two people exist side by side with Luogia, and it's not surprising that they have the current courage. Hawkeye couldn't help thinking back to the execution he had witnessed in Rog 20 years ago. That man named Galdi Luogia, even when he was dying, the courage he showed was enough to break the hearts of everyone present. Hawkeye is also one of them. Luogia's words and his courage before he died left a very deep impression on him back then. Clang. The collision between Black Knife and Black Knife. Boom. The collision between the fist and the naginata. Hey, Garp, is this all your strength? Are your fists that weak? Whitebeard growled, clenching the naginata tightly with both hands. On the blade edge of the naginata, the fluctuations exuding a white halo condensed and swayed on the blade edge like a liquid. That's a combination of sword wave, haki, and shock fruit. Bang, click, click. Boom, click, click. Whitebeard is like a tireless one-knife chop. Countless atmospheric cracks are extending, and this area seems to be filled with silver-white atmospheric cracks. The whole of Marineford is misaligned. Terrible earthquakes continued. The sea water in the distance is like a solid jelly, the whole is staggered, piece by piece. The dislocation of the sea, the constant earthquakes, the cracks everywhere, the thick black clouds in the upper sky, and the cracked sky. The whole Marineford is like entering the end of the world. This is the strength of the strongest man in the world, Whitebeard. In the case of Whitebeard's reckless use of abilities, he was suppressed almost instantly. No matter how strong his fist is, with Conqueror's Haki wrapped around him, he can't overwhelm Whitebeard, who is now fighting for his life. Whitebeard's laugh grew bolder. However, only he himself can feel his own body, which is like dying. In that body, from all directions, the pain erupting from every muscle seemed to want to tear him apart. Blood gushed out of the throat, but it was swallowed abruptly by the day. Down here. It's just pain, it's just an old injury, for him, he can bear it. Strong willpower and pride made him drag this body that should have collapsed a long time ago, and still burst out with the strength of the strongest man in the sea. Wait for me, Ace. Whitebeard's father-like gaze, the silver-white light in his pupils reached ultimate. That's his ability to use Haki to the limit. His movement, the turning of his eyes, and the silver light in his pupils were like a silver streamer flashing across the air. It looked terribly frightening. I'm Whitebeard. Whitebeard roared loudly, and the naginata in his hand burst into endless destruction. Click 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 click. Dense atmospheric cracks appeared at the edge of his blade. It's completely different from the previous ones. If it was a barely shattered mirror before, then now, the atmosphere in front of Whitebeard, CGFJ, has been completely crushed. Between the big cracks, small cracks densely covered the entire space. The whole Marineford really started to shake. It's not the localized earthquakes or slight tremors of the islands that we had before. Instead, it shook violently, as if the entire island was being shaken like a building block. The sea level in the distance has completely surpassed naval headquarters. If Aokiji hadn't frozen the sea in a huge range, the tsunami would have submerged this Marineford long ago. Even so, the extremely high sea level still aroused everyone's fear. Naval headquarters is coming to him, that is the symbol of marine justice. The already huge cracks in the ground were completely torn apart by the huge earthquake, like a huge gully, and the seawater under the cracks could already be seen directly. At this moment, Whitebeard's will surpassed his body, allowing him to explode with a strength far beyond this crippled body, as if he had returned to his peak. Dad is angry, hold on tight. As this Whitebeard, this destructive power, can we really win? Help, I don't want to die. Cries of despair echoed throughout Marineford. Bang bang bang. Garp's sturdy figure also smashed through several walls under this terrifying blow. Ahem, Whitebeard, you. Garp coughed up blood and crawled out of the ruins. Looking at the Whitebeard in shock, that shouldn't be the power that the current Whitebeard can use at all. Even when Whitebeard was young, using such a powerful shock would have a very heavy burden. And now with such an old body, there is no doubt that he is completely desperate. No, it can no longer be said to be fighting for life, but the real burning life. Use his last vitality to make the strongest attack. It can be said that this battle does not matter whether it is won or lost. Even Whitebeard didn't suffer much in this battle. After returning, he won't live for long, and it is even more likely that he will die directly on this battlefield. Died of exhaustion. To be honest, this is a situation that every Marine never thought of before the war started. Whitebeard, he really regarded this battlefield as his own graveyard. Garp, don't you still understand? Our era has passed, and the tide of the new era has already surged. Didn't you hear the sound of the surging waves? Whitebeard laughed and pointed at Straw Hat with his naginata, at Zoro, at Sanji, at Chopper, at Marco, Josie, and Ace. Open your eyes, Garp, Luogia has been dead for 20 years, this is a new era. I am a remnant of the old era. In the new era, there is no boat that can support me. Let me be here, with my last strength, to propel the ship of the new era, and sail, little devils. Whitebeard's roar echoed almost across the battlefield. His consciousness, as heavy as the last wave of the old era, impacted the hearts of everyone on this battlefield. What is carried in that voice can be called heavy, the history of the old era. It gave the pirates an indescribable surge of vitality, and gave all Marines unimaginable pressure. Whitebeard. A gleam appeared in the corner of Rayleigh's eye. He seemed to be able to see the glorious old times that belonged to them from Whitebeard's heavy voice. Father. Ace was on the execution platform, and he slammed his head on the execution platform forcefully, already weeping uncontrollably. Next to him was Sengoku, almost gnashing his teeth. The morale boosted by Garp's participation in the battle, and Whitebeard's roar, will, and awareness turned the entire battlefield around in an instant. That terrible realization, at this moment, hit Sengoku's heart like a heavy hammer. It made his eyes darken slightly. How can you interfere with our admiral, Aokiji? Rayleigh drew his long knife and pointed it straight at Aokiji. His whole body was like a pillar of air soaring into the sky, so sharp that it was hard to look directly at it. If we say that the previous Rayleigh is like an ancient sword, although it is still sharp, but the edge has been wrapped by himself. With these 20 years of silence. But now, Whitebeard's heroic will, completely awakened Rayleigh. Let this Pluton, who has been silent for more than 20 years, show his own sharpness at this moment. What you carry is far from ours, Marine brat. Rayleigh laughed loudly. The voice was heavy and passionate, as if an era had been burdened on him. At this moment, Aokiji was slightly stunned. With confusion in his heart, it is impossible for him to be as sharp as Rayleigh, and to move forward indomitably. Not to mention the heroism of Whitebeard's desperate charge, willing to be a fallen leaf, and open up the era. The confusion that was originally suppressed by Garp appeared in Aokiji's heart at this moment. But this time, it's not just the confusion about justice. Look at Rayleigh, look at Whitebeard. Aokiji thought for the first time. What are the pirates who stand on the opposite side of justice? What do they think? What do they pursue? And what do they implement? Liberty and justice, or evil and justice? Hey, Garp, what's wrong with you? Your punch is not as powerful as before. Where is your consciousness and your justice? Whitebeard swung his knife heroically and laughed loudly. We've won, Garp. Against the battlefield, Whitebeard, who has an extremely keen sense of smell, clearly knows where the real breaking point is in this seemingly balanced battlefield. Not them here, nor Roronoa or Blackfoot Sanji. The real breaking point is only one point. That was what they had discussed at the very beginning, the real protagonist of this war. That little devil full of wonder. Come on, Straw Hat Xiaoyu. Whitebeard coughed blood, his heart seemed to explode, but he still laughed loudly. Rescue Ace. Ah, I see, Uncle Whitebeard. Luffy's roar resounded throughout the battlefield. Rubber rubber, giant. A huge roar was accompanied by a huge person. Comparable to Oz in size, he expanded almost instantly, and this godlike white giant could be clearly seen on the entire battlefield. Lie down for me, Akainu. Luffy, who had grown into a giant, roared. The sound wave is like a huge shock wave. Rubber rubber, giant karma gunfight. Huge Luffy, one jump into high school. The arm, which is much larger than the average giant, can actually be extended, completely violating the stretching limit of rubber. Boom 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 boom. Luffy's fist turned into an afterimage in an instant. Like a volcano falling from the sky, hot flames wrapped his fists, which were then completely dyed black and red by armament Haki and Conqueror's Haki. It fell all over the sky, with a terrifying oppressive force that suffocated everyone. Straw Hat Kid. Akainu also roared. All around him was completely flowing magma, and the area of several hundred meters was filled with hot magma. His lower body completely turned into magma, carrying the magma under his feet. Like a huge river of magma, it flows upstream towards the sky. Crimson hell. Turn me to ashes, Straw Hat. Boom. The next moment, an indescribable collision erupted. The black clouds all over the sky were directly pushed away by the invisible shock wave of the collision. This is no longer a sky crack, but in the true sense, the sky has been broken. It's different from Whitebeard's side, where Whitebeard is working hard alone. And here, Luffy and Akainu, these two one-sided guys, are all desperate. Luffy roared. His body was beyond the limit, blood was already pumped out. But he didn't care. It's just that he swung his huge fist faster and harder. Boom 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 boom. Just a moment of stalemate. The mountain of flaming fists that filled the sky crushed the long river of magma. The terrifying fist force smashed the gushing magma inch by inch. The shadow of a fist that cannot be caught by the naked eye falls. Straw Hat Kid. Akainu only had time to roar angrily. The next moment, the boundless shadow of a fist burning with black flames hit him like a huge city wall. His whole body was knocked down to the ground in an instant, and the ground beneath him was constantly shattering. Roll into the bottom of the sea for me. The blue veins on Luffy's forehead were exposed, and the strength in his whole body exceeded the limit. Boom 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 boom. The whole of Marineford was shaking. It's different from the earthquake triggered by Whitebeard's ability. This is pure brute force, abruptly bombarding the large island of Marin Lando. Rumble. Sometime. It was as if something had been broken in half and smashed into the sea. Everyone looked at the Straw Hat Kid. What I saw was an extremely shocking scene. The battlefield where the Straw Hat Kid is. A deep pit with a diameter of hundreds of meters appeared. Looking from that pothole, you can clearly see the sea water at the bottom of the pit. Marineford was pierced, and it was punched through by the Straw Hat Boy with fists and brute force. Shanks, is this the man you entrusted? Hawkeye looked at Luffy in the distance, slightly absent-minded. He seemed able to understand a little the friend's choice. I've said it a long time ago, the Straw Hat Boy is terrible. Kizaru fell from the sky, looked at the terrifying destructive power of the battle over there, and said helplessly. He emphasized the horror of the Straw Hat many times, but only Mr. Sengoku listened a little bit. Kizaru knew it clearly the first time he played against Gear 5. The Straw Hat Kid already has the strength to defeat Admiral head-on, as long as he can become more familiar with that exaggerated ability. And now, obviously, Sakazuki's ending confirmed his guess. Of course, the attack just now, even if it was him, couldn't be better than Sakazuki. Sakazuki demoned all Admiral. Chapter 64 Ace is rescued, crazy both sides. Advertise here. Thinking of this, Kizaru actually breathed a sigh of relief. Because if he hadn't made an early move and had chosen his opponent, it is very likely that he would be facing the Straw Hat Boy now. Although Blackfoot Sanji is also very strong and troublesome, but compared to Straw Hat Boy's 5th gear, he is far behind. One is the level of being able to cope with the past, and the other is the level of being beaten unconscious even if you try your best. At this moment, all eyes on the battlefield were focused on the Straw Hat Boy who fell from the sky. From him, everyone seems to have seen what the day said. That unstoppable, rolling wave of the new era. From this moment today, this scene, the name of Straw Hat Boy is destined to spread throughout the sea and reach the top of the world. Gu-la-la-la, did you see that? Garp, the balance of victory has tipped. Whitebeard laughed out loud. He knew that the Straw Hat Boy would not let him see him. His body was indeed full of miracles. Come on, Straw Hat Kid. Whitebeard laughed, swung a beautiful naginata in his hand, pushed Garp back, and then yelled loudly at Luffy. Rescue Ace. One after another sound waves came from all directions on the battlefield. The pirate's momentum, at this moment, completely trampled Marine's morale under his feet. Come on, Straw Hat. The members of the Whitebeard pirates cheered loudly. Come on Luffy. With a deep magnetic voice, sparks from the collision of the black knives flew, Zoro said in a low voice. Come on, Luffy, you must be in pain during this time. Chopper neighed like a beast. You must rescue your big brother, Luffy. The partner of the Straw Hats on the Moby Dick raised his left arm with the mark of the partner engraved on it. Come on, Ace's younger brother, save Ace. Marco stretched his wings, and the cyan rain of fire fell from the sky, loudly. One sound after another is like wings blessed on Luffy's body. His body has become a little shriveled due to excessive use of the fifth gear to overdraw his physical strength. At this moment, the heartbeat like the sound of a drum sounded again, like the drum of another battle. The shriveled body instantly filled up. White light appeared on Luffy's body again. He actually entered the fifth gear in an instant again, as if he was tireless. Go away, he growled. Marine, who was surrounded in front of the execution platform, was directly stunned by this charging young man, for a split second. Luffy had passed high above their heads, stepped on the iron execution platform to Rayleigh, and within a few jumps, Luffy had already rushed to the execution platform. Luffy! Ace shouted excitedly. Tears of excitement filled the eyes. This younger brother, in order to save him, did everything he could to come here. Luffy the Straw Hat. The moment Luffy stepped onto the execution platform, bright golden light burst from Sengoku's body, and a deep and majestic roar sounded. Thump, 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 thump. One by one iron screws were squeezed from the execution platform and bounced off like bullets. The entire iron execution platform made an overwhelmed creaking sound and began to shake violently. Luffy turned back with a solemn expression, protecting Ace behind him. In front of him is a huge golden Buddha statue. From the face, it can be seen that it is Martial Sengoku. It's just that, at this moment, he has completely turned into a golden Buddha, with a terrifying and frightening aura. Straw Hat Boy, you sinner of the whole world, do you know what you are doing? Sengoku held up the golden Buddha's palm high. On the palm of the Buddha, the golden shock wave condensed, exuding an incomparable aura. Buddha's shock. Be on trial, Straw Hat. Rubber rubber, giant balloons. Luffy's body swelled instantly, and his body instantly turned into a huge balloon, with the armed color and conqueror's Haki wrapped around his stomach, facing Sengoku's golden shock wave head on. Boom. A terrifying golden shock wave burst out. The entire execution platform could no longer bear the huge pressure, and the whole began to disintegrate. Rumble. The huge steel frame hit the ground, setting off billows of smoke and dust. The smoke dispersed, and a man surrounded by white steam, exhaling heavily, quickly walked away from the execution platform. Everyone watched this scene in shock. Live phone bug. People all over the world looking at the boy named Mengtiauco Luffy. With the full strength of Marine, Fire Fist Ace was rescued. So far, Fire Fist Ace, successful rescue. Success. Little ones, set sail and prepare to retreat. Whitebeard laughed loudly, his heroic laughter seemed to be able to pierce the entire sky. He slashed back the slightly dazed Garp. Then he threw the Naginata violently into the sky. With both hands grabbing forward vigorously, the 10 fingers seemed to be able to grasp the entire space. An invisible wave swept away. All the muscles in Whitebeard's body were trembling, and he let out a loud roar. His pupils seemed to be trembling. His fingers dug into the air forcefully and pulled down violently. The whole world seemed to stagnate for a moment, and then changed color. Rumble. Compared with the previous full-strength shot, a larger shock appeared in the sea area around Marineford in Marineford. The ground cracked. The huge naval headquarters building collapses in an instant. The ground tilted more than 40 degrees in an instant, and some people couldn't control their bodies and sank into the crack. And the ice battlefield in the distance. The huge water flow hit the entire huge ice block under the ice block and was shaking. Get back to the boat. The experienced pirate captain shouted loudly. The pirates scrambled towards the pirate ship. Next moment. The dislocation of the huge ocean current forcefully tore apart the thick water blocks in the surrounding sea area. The power of freezing cannot compete with the entire sea after all. Straw Hat Boy, quickly bring Ace over here. On the big ship next to the Moby Dick, several logistics personnel of the Whitebeard pirates yelled towards the sky. The Whitebeard pirates had already considered the seastone handcuffs. It is still relatively difficult to break the seastone handcuffs directly. After all, the seastone handcuffs used by naval headquarters are not inferior, and the purity of the seastone inside is very high. But to put it bluntly, the handcuffs are still old-fashioned locks after all, and there is no need to think of a way to break the handcuffs, just untie the handcuffs. At this point, there are too many people in the Whitebeard pirates. Without a key, a handcuff can be opened in a few seconds. As long as the seastone handcuffs can be opened, then this plan is basically a success. After all, Ace's strength is not weak, and he is also a strong man close to the admiral level. On this battlefield, when many strong men are held back, survival is absolutely guaranteed. I am coming. Luffy stomped on the air and ran. His fifth gear is indeed the most exaggerated ability, all the rules seem to be distorted in front of him. It's like the ability in funny comics. Flying is not just flying, nor is it flying through the soles of the feet in fourth gear, but it is really running on the air, which seems exaggerated to the extreme. However, it has not passed the protective wall. An indescribable sense of emptiness instantly penetrated the whole body. Not good, but it's this time. An anxious look appeared on Luffy's face, but it was useless to be anxious any longer. The next moment, his body shrank rapidly. Muscles sagged, hair turned black, and the whole person seemed to have aged decades and turned into a puddle of mud, falling from the air. This is the performance after severe physical exhaustion. No way. In terms of basic physical fitness, he is even inferior to Admiral, relying on Rubber Fruit's gear shift to explode beyond Admiral's combat power. All of this is in exchange for the accelerated flow of physical strength. When he defeated Akainu in the 5th gear, he was almost exhausted. With the encouragement of everyone later, he forcibly recovered his physical strength in the heartbeat of liberation, and entered the 5th gear to rescue Ace. That's the limit of the limit. Plus block Sengoku's attack and take Ace away. Up to now, his physical strength has been completely overdrawn, unless the liberating heartbeat sounds again at this time. Luffy. Straw Hat Kid. Brother Luffy. On the battlefield, countless people looked at Luffy, who fell down in the air, full of worried cries. Marine, on the other hand, seems to have grasped at straws. Everyone, attack Luffy, the Straw Hat Boy, and grab the Fire Fist Ace. Sengoku roared loudly, and the huge golden Buddha slammed on the ground, bursting out at an unimaginable speed for that huge and heavy body, and rushed towards the place where the Straw Hat Boy fell. This war was broadcast live all over the world. Those large islands and countries can all clearly see the live broadcast of this war. Fire Fist Ace was rescued, already disgraced their marine, world government. If the Whitebeard pirates successfully evacuate with the Fire Fist Ace, then their battle will completely lose any meaning. Not only that, all Marines will also be completely nailed to the pillar of shame. But now the only remedy is to either stop the Fire Fist Ace, no longer consider any punishment, and directly beat him to death. Either the Straw Hat Pirates, and the Whitebeard Pirates, will be wiped out here. The latter is almost impossible, and all that can be used is the former. All Marines, do you want to be nailed to the shame of the world? Behind us is justice. Sengoku roared without any grace. He used to look down on Whitebeard's way, or he didn't like it. He preferred to do everything before the war, make comprehensive preparations, and crush in an upright manner. Not a miracle, or anything else. But now, he can only hope for the miracle of Marine. It has to be said that Sengoku's final cry in this desperate situation really changed the appearance of Marine on the entire battlefield. No matter what thoughts everyone had in their hearts before. But now, Marine is completely standing on the edge of the cliff, and one step back is the abyss. They can't go back anymore. Grab the Fire Fist Ace, their last redemption. Ask for flowers. At this moment, Marine is all prosperous and all is lost. Although the old man really wants to stay out of the matter, after all, the old man is still a Marine, ambiguous justice is justice, and I cannot tolerate you pirates who continue to be so unscrupulous. Kizaru seemed to sigh, and whispered helplessly. Countless bright. The bright photons condensed on his body, so dazzling that Sanji couldn't help squinting his eyes slightly. Although you bear the so-called justice behind you, along the way, what we bear is not easy for you. Sanji gently smoked the cigarette from the corner of his mouth. The cigarette holder was completely covered with bloodline. The trouser legs under his feet were already in tatters, and there were still some spots of light on his body. He exhaled lightly, his eyes calm as if he was looking at a piece of food. So, you can't get through it, Kizaru. Behind me, there are dreams and partners that are heavier than death. Devil God's Wind Feet, World Package, Hell Ground Meat. Boom, Sanji's whole body is like a ball of fire burning in the air. High-temperature flames, twined by twisted conquerors and armament Haki, black and deep, like the flames of hell, boarded the world's dining table. Thump, 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 thump. The sound of the air being stepped on exploded sounded. The gas explosion footprints with black flames seemed to be printed in the sky. The next moment, the bright light and the black flames of hell erupted in an instant, swallowing all the sunlight in the entire sky, leaving only the pure fire and golden light waves. Luffy. On the other side, Zoro looked at Luffy falling from the sky and shouted loudly. The whole person instantly turned into a black light and disappeared before Hawkeye's eyes. Roronoa. Hawkeye didn't make a move to stop it, with his strength. Even Zoro, who is at full strength at this moment, is sure to stop him from rescuing the Straw Hat Kid. But he chose to give up. He is not Marine Admiral, and even he used to hunt Marine for fun, and was a notorious Marine hunter. Although now become Shichibukai, but he didn't take the position very seriously. In this war, if it weren't for Whitebeard, the strongest man in the world, to participate in the war, Hawkeye might not necessarily come to participate in this war. Not to mention, at this moment, both the Straw Hat Boy and Roronoa have already been approved by him. The former is the younger generation who passed on the will of his friend Shanks, and the latter is the great swordsman he recognized, and even his successor. He doesn't have any need to work for Marine. In other words, he was able to hold Zoro for such a long time, and Marine should be grateful to him instead. Roronoa, you have embarked on a new path of swordsman. Hawkeye exclaimed, his sharp eyes seemed to be able to see the Shira ghost that emerged from Zoro's body as he ran violently. At this point, Zoro's path is really formed. Not because of the three-sword style, but because of the will of the swordsman condensed in him at this moment. The way of Asura. Interesting, next time we meet again, it will be a real battle of swordsmen. Hawkeye slowly inserted Dahe Daoya into his back. To be honest, he came to the right place in this war, witnessing the path of a great swordsman who is not weaker than him, which is also very beneficial to him now. Marine's brat, if you don't have the will, just leave this battlefield for me. Rayleigh has never yelled so loudly in the past 20 years. Since Luojia's death, he didn't know how long he hadn't really shot with all his strength. Physical decline may not be much, but mental decline is absolute. If it wasn't for this war, if it wasn't for meeting Luffy, his will to be a strong man would have been exhausted. Get out of here. Rayleigh's figure disappeared instantly, and a huge hemispherical deep pit appeared on his original ground. As if there were countless sword chi shrouded around his body, he stuck to the ground and approached Aokiji rapidly like a sharp sword, and the ground he passed was instantly cut by the violent knife chi. Cut into countless pieces. Ice time. Aokiji swung his right hand vigorously, and an unimaginable cold burst out between his 5 fingers. The cold air spread like a huge shock wave, freezing everything in front of it. This is the last desperate time. With Fire Fist aces taken from the scaffold. Whether it's marine or pirate, they are completely crazy at the moment. Facing the incoming cold shock wave. In Rayleigh's eyes, a red light flickered, like a scarlet streamer flashing across the air. God avoids. He shouted loudly. On his body, there seemed to be another figure, swinging the knife together with him. That was Luo Jia's will, and Luo Jia's moves completely broke out at this moment. Everything around Rayleigh seemed to be distorted in an instant. The shock wave of cold air seemed to be directly sunken. Rayleigh's figure instantly appeared behind Aokiji, his body covered with frost. Behind him, G2E half kneeled on the ground. Drops of warm blood were sprinkled on the cold ice. Chapter 65. Summit War, the winner is already divided. Advertise here. Ahem. Aokiji was half kneeling on the ground, holding the ice with one hand and covering his mouth with the other hand, coughing violently. However, he continued to cough up blood. On one side of his waist, a bright red mark is constantly expanding. Invisible slash. Aokiji whispered. Obviously he had completely dodged the slash just now, but he was still injured. Rayleigh didn't respond to his words, and the moment he was cut, the whole person had turned into an afterimage and disappeared. Oops. Aokiji stood up abruptly, but the injury on his waist made his body stand still for a moment. It is this short moment that has a fatal impact on the battle situation. This injury is not considered a fatal injury, even for the admiral level, it is not even considered a serious injury, but it is this small injury that makes Aokiji a step slower. The other side at the same time. Garp looked at Ace who had been rescued in the distance and Luffy who had just been picked up by the Whitebeard pirates. Slightly absent-minded, family affection and justice once again tormented deep in his heart, and even fighting could not suppress this feeling. On one side is the road of justice that has been walked for a lifetime, and on the other side are 2 grandsons who have watched them grow up since childhood. In Garp's sharp eyes, confusion appeared rarely. Garp. Whitebeard caught the bewilderment in Garp's eyes sharply. For the battle between masters, this kind of confusion is fatal. Especially for them who rely purely on physical skills, unlike Logia ability users who have such a high fault tolerance rate. It can be said that at this moment, Whitebeard was able to slash Garp into a serious injury, and even if he slashed to a fatal part, it is possible to lose half his life. It's just that Whitebeard sighed after all, and didn't kill him. After knocking Garp back with a punch, he strode toward Luffy with huge strides. Straw Hat Boy, leave it to me. Sengoku's huge roar appeared. 6:30, boom. The huge and heavy figure fell from the sky, crushing the entire ground, and countless stones flew like bullets. There were bloodstains on the faces of the pirates of the Whitebeard pirates. However, the pain of bloodstains is far less than the fear in my heart. The powerful courage, almost in an instant, caused the group of pirates who had caught Luffy and Ace to collapse to the ground. It was Marshal Sengoku. Ah, the pirates were shrouded in a huge shadow, unable to ignite any fighting spirit at all. They are just a group of pirates, far away from the battlefield ahead, not the famous captain of the big pirate, nor the captain directly under the Whitebeard pirates. It's just ordinary pirates, facing Sengoku who was at the peak of anger and oppressive like a ghost. They didn't faint on the spot, they already have strong willpower. Go to hell, Straw Hat. Sengoku didn't hesitate at all. The moment he appeared, the huge golden palm condensed a bright shock wave. The golden palm slammed down towards Luffy heavily. Move me, my body. Luffy was shriveled, looked at the dazzling golden light, and roared in his heart. However, the body that has already exhausted its physical strength has not moved at all, it is not even as good as an ordinary person's body, and it cannot move at all at this moment. And the rhythm of the liberating heartbeat is really too unpredictable. Obviously, at this moment, the heartbeat did not respond to the cry in Luffy's heart. You've done a good job, Luffy. Just when Luffy was screaming crazily in his heart, a gentle voice rang in his ears. The broad figure slammed him down to the ground. Then it stood in front of him. Ace. Luffy growled loudly in despair. Could it be that in the end, Ace couldn't be saved? Ace. Whitebeard's pupils contracted, and the silver-white light in his eyes was already extremely bright. However, even if he is the closest, it is difficult to catch up. It's just a little bit worse, just because of negligence. Everything is about to fail in the next moment. It all happened in a split second, the moment Sengoku's palm was about to slam down. An attack from the farthest place has also arrived. Boom. A huge explosion explodes above Sengoku's golden Buddha head. The powerful force, comparable to Shichibukai's full blow, made Sengoku's body stagger. That's the slight stagger. With that huge body, the landing point of the shot was off by a large margin. Boom. Sengoku's full strength strike unleashed terrifying destructive power. The bright golden shock wave exploded and spread on the ground. An unparalleled storm swept the surroundings, easily flying the surrounding pirates and marines, and the sky was blown apart by the violent airflow. This is Marshal Sengoku's all-out blow. What? Luffy yelled. His state at the moment was similar to that of an ordinary person, the flying gravel pierced through his body like bullets. The same is true for Ace on the side, wearing extremely high-purity seastone handcuffs, he is as powerless as an ordinary person. Only, this is already the best result. Slam it head-on, and both he and Luffy will die. Now it's just the impact of the aftermath, and their strong physical fitness can still bear it. Ace. Luffy yelled loudly even though he was swept into the air. I am here. Ace responded as well. Not dying is the best result. On the Moby Dick in the distance, Usopp touched his long nose and smiled triumphantly. Don't forget, the sniper of the Straw Hat Pirates. Damn it, it's almost there. Who is it? Sengoku knew it was broken the moment he was staggered by the attack. Incomparable anger filled his heart, and the best opportunity was destroyed just like that. He twisted his body, and aimed his huge golden palm at Fire Fist Ace and the Straw Hat Kid who were blown into the air. It's just that he hasn't shot yet. 3 terrifying murderous auras that could suffocate people appeared behind him in an instant, completely enveloping him. At this moment, in Sengoku's heart, it was as if he was being watched by the evil spirits of hell. The 3 shadows behind him, with bloody red light, completely covered him. Even with such a huge body, he felt a small feeling. Sengoku. 3 extremely angry roars sounded. Get me from Ace, Luffy, our captain. Go away. Sengoku reluctantly turned around and saw the silvery white light in Whitebeard's eyes. A hell-like evil ghost, Shira, with 3 heads and 6 arms, and 9 knives shining with scarlet light. An old man with silver hair and a sword swing, just like the man who once conquered the Grand Line. Click click click. Boom. Hum. 3 different attacks hit Sengoku's huge and heavy body almost instantly. At this moment, the atmosphere turned into peeling fragments that could not be crushed into fine powder. The Scarlet 9 sword waves are like a long knife wielded by a black Ashura ghost hundreds of meters tall. The invisible and invisible Jonbo is the most low-key, but he tore everything into pieces easily. Boom. Like a bright beam of light. Sengoku's huge Buddha body, surrounded by shock waves, flew high in the shocking eyes of everyone. It directly hits a distance of several thousand meters, running through the entire naval headquarters. Life and death are unknown. No one can forget the scene in front of them. The legends of the old era and the monsters of the new era stood in front of the boy wearing the straw hat. As expected of father. So handsome. Zoro. Come on. Ship doctor. Where is the unlocked one? Quickly open the chain for Ace. Amidst the cheers of the crowd, groups of pirates from the Whitebeard pirates moved towards Luffy desperately. Click. The heavy chain fell to the ground. The seastone handcuffs, in front of the real unlocking experts in the Whitebeard pirate group, were easily opened in just a dozen seconds. After all, it is not a precise chain. The lock of the seastone handcuffs is the oldest and easiest to crack. Boom. A raging flame burned on Ace's body. With Seastone's handcuffs removed, his top Logia ability and his strong physical fitness are all back. What a fool you are, Luffy. Ace, who was covered in flames, smiled gently like a big brother, and stretched out his hand to Luffy. The flames burned all over him, but Luffy wasn't hurt at all. Gu la la la, little ones, evacuate. Whitebeard laughed and said loudly, as the old shouts set sail. Father, let you worry. Ace choked slightly at Whitebeard. What are you talking about, Ace? How can there be a child whose parents don't worry about it? Whitebeard turned his back to Ace and faced Marine, his eyes were gentle like a loving father, and he said flatly. Welcome home, Ace. The plain and gentle words made Ace burst into tears instantly. That's Whitebeard, the greatest man in the world he'd willingly die for. The Whitebeard pirates are evacuating back to the ship as soon as possible. It is not completely out of danger yet. Don't look at them saving Ace now. But the first half of the Grand Line is the territory of world government and Marine. It's too close to Mariajoy on the Red Line, and once world government support arrives, they are still very dangerous. Only back to the New World, where is their real territory? Even the world government dare not go deep. Sengoku. On the battlefield in the distance, Garp had complicated eyes, looking in the direction of Sengoku who smashed through the naval headquarters and didn't know if he was alive or dead. He was full of confusion at the moment, not knowing what to do. In fact, he now knows very well that the most important thing he should do at this moment is to raise his arms and shout, with Marine's elite combat power, attack the pirates with all his strength, and compete for the Fire Fist Ace. But he can't. When Ace was on the execution platform, he could still paralyze himself. Take action to stop the pirates who come to rescue Ace. But now, he's out of nowhere with an ace shot. That is equivalent to personally killing the ace raised by him. So, at this moment, he can only stand there in a daze, not even knowing what to do. A few seconds later, he took action, but he just used his fist to knock out a few pirates around him. Ace's escape had a huge impact on the entire battle situation. Marine's morale is falling precipitously. Is it still a failure in the end? Phew. Call. Kizaru turned into light to avoid Sanji's attack, his eyes were a little depressed. This time, he really didn't touch the fish and release the water. A yellow and white striped suit was almost completely torn, and Admiral's cloak had long been burned by the black flames. The trouser legs were torn, and blood oozed from a pair of big hairy legs. He has already used all his strength, however, there are too many monsters in the Straw Hat Pirates. The strength is strong, and the fighting will and awareness are terrifyingly strong. After all, it is impossible to step over the Blackfoot Sanji to support others, and can only hold back the Blackfoot, or be held back by the Blackfoot. Marine's failure was something that no one had thought of before the war. When this scene really came, even Admiral couldn't help feeling frustrated. The will to fight has been greatly reduced. Hoo. Sanji stepped on the air, panting heavily. His image is even worse than Kizaru, his suit is almost broken, and the leather shoes under his feet have completely burst, exposing his bloody feet. In terms of overall strength, after all, he is only slightly behind the veteran admiral like Kizaru. The Straw Hat Pirates' 3 powers. In fact, the basic quality is worse than that of the admiral level. Evolution ultimately takes their physical limits into account. Their previous bodies had been strengthened to the limit, and they were also a little worse than the monster-level physical fitness that the admiral level spent decades honing. Really able to compete with the admiral level. Rely on the top conqueror's haki, and evolved fighting skills. Zoro's sword skills, Sanji's kick skills. Their fighting skills are even better than admiral's. This is the only way to steadily reach admiral-level combat power. But also as Kizaru thought. The gap is very small, and with that fighting will and awareness, admiral is simply not able to overcome it. There is no limit to their will. The limit is when their captain actually rescues the eldest brother. In the next fight, I will be stronger than now, Kizaru. Sanji stared at Kizaru with terrifyingly piercing eyes. Kizaru looked into those piercing eyes, a little silent. In those eyes was something he lacked. The vigor and drive that belong exclusively to young people. He just now suddenly remembered a terrible fact, the young people of the Straw Hat Pirates, they are only about 20 years old. Perhaps, as Whitebeard said, our time is completely over. Whitebeard's words echoed in Kizaru's mind. The new era has come, and the billowing tide gushes out from the corpses of the old era and rushes to the horizon. The sound of the waves is surging, like the death knell of the times. In the end it's still a bad move. Crane sighed slightly. Her intelligence is not inferior to Sengoku, so she can understand the current battlefield more clearly. If 3.2 does not have the addition of additional power. This war has already been decided. In this war, they paid too much and planned too much. It's just that it fell down in the end. Just because they missed one of the most important points. Everyone underestimated Straw Hat Pirates. Crane looked into the distance, the Straw Hat Boy surrounded by many pirates and guarded by the legends of the old times. With his strength and power beyond anyone's imagination, he defeated the world's pinnacle war set off by the world government. Hey, where's the doctor? Come on, Zephyr Admiral is down. The marine soldier yelled in despair. Are the Straw Hat Pirates really that strong? A pet with a bounty of 50 Baileys can also defeat Zephyr Admiral. Marine was a little desperate at the moment. Although Zephyr is the former admiral and has retired from admiral's position for a long time, that is also admiral's combat power. In the end, he was now defeated by 50 Bailey's Straw Hat Pirate's pet. This absurd comparison is really desperate. Cough. Zephyr, who had an asthma attack, was already very uncomfortable. Hearing the desperate voices of the marine soldiers around him, he almost suffocated on the spot. What do you mean he was defeated by a pet with a bounty of 50 Baileys? Not to mention that he was not defeated at all, he just suffered from asthma. Without asthma, he could at least fight for a whole day. Again, the moose monster on the opposite side couldn't possibly be 50 Baileys. What's wrong with the designated marines in the headquarters who set up the bounty? Those who control Conqueror's Haki, control Conqueror's entanglement, and those who are as strong as monsters have already begun to collide head-on with him, the former admiral. How could it be 50 Baileys? Even the billion-level pirates in New World are far from this. This is a real monster that can go head-to-head with Admiral. Chapter 66. Kong, Blackbeard, and the Intensified War. Advertise here. What a shame. Zephyr was filled with embarrassment. He is very clear. No matter how many factors there are. I'm afraid after today, he's in the Marine. It was the former admiral who was defeated by the 50 Bailey pirates. After returning, no matter what, we must raise the bounty of this Tony Chopper, the higher the better. Zephyr gasped, thinking to himself. Asthma. Chopper looked at the former admiral kneeling weakly on the ground in front of him, panting heavily. You can see the other person's illness at a glance. However, this disease is also a disease that cannot be cured and can only be controlled. It's really hard to imagine. The Uncle Marine who was able to suppress him in a head-to-head confrontation just now still suffers from asthma. Such a big age, coupled with asthma and disability, can still explode such fighting power. It can only be said that Yin Zhong really exists like a monster. Of course, what Chopper doesn't know is that he is also a monster-level existence in Zephyr's eyes. Chopper faced the sick Zephyr, but did not make a move. As a doctor's morality, he will not take action on patients who are suffering from illness. Of course, there is no treatment either. Facing this kind of asthmatic patients, he didn't have any medicines at hand, so he could only rely on their own doctors in Marine. Back to the New World, little ones. Whitebeard growled. Under the command of the great pirate captain and Captain Ban, the Whitebeard pirates are evacuating in an orderly manner. The weak ones board the ship first, and the really strong captains stay behind with the captains. Thanks to Luffy's reckless shot earlier, Wangsei Haki cut a large part of the marine soldiers on the protective wall. As a result, the large number of coastal anti-corrosion guns on the protective wall on the marine side did not take action, otherwise, the pirate ships of the Whitebeard pirate group would not have dared to get so close. Fire punch. Ace jumps into the air and punches out. A huge flame tornado appeared on the sea. Those ice cubes that had been shattered by Whitebeard's tsunami were instantly melted, completely unable to affect the evacuation of the pirate ship. The members of the Whitebeard pirates quickly evacuated, and the Marines' efforts to stop them were weak. No one expected that there would be so many admirals and monsters close to the admiral level participating in this war. When the number of admiral level monsters increases, ordinary marine elites, only 26 doesn't seem to be much use. Those elite marine soldiers drawn from marine bases from all over the world, to be honest, played very little role in this war. It is impossible for them to siege, because there are too many admiral level monsters. On the contrary, there are a large number of marine soldiers who need to consider avoiding admiral level battles to avoid being torn apart by the aftermath of the battle. And except for many marine soldiers, Marine's combat power at the middle level can't take advantage of it at all, and it's even at a complete disadvantage. The elite vice admiral of the headquarters fought extremely hard against the captains of the pirate group under Whitebeard, let alone the stronger captains. The top combat power is held back and cannot support others. The middle ranks of Marine are almost suppressed by the cadres of the Whitebeard pirates. And now, when Sengoku was attacked by 3 people at the same time, and now his life and death are unknown, Marine's top combat power has also fallen into a disadvantage. There is almost no chance of a comeback. Let them go. He said calmly. In this situation, there is no need to continue fighting. If we continue to fight, it will only increase our losses. If we lose, we will lose. Crane Vice Admiral. Kizaru's expression changed, but he didn't continue to say anything. This is my order, and I will bear all the consequences. Crane's calm voice was full of determination. Without external interference, the current Marine, not to mention keeping Whitebeard and the others, is a little bit difficult to protect themselves now. After all, Redhead was ready to go to war, only to be held back by Kaido. Don't look at Whitebeard's fear of Mariajoy's support, and Marine's fear of 4 Emperors Redhead's support. The power of the world government has to guard against the revolutionary army, which is scattered all over the world, and the strength of support is simply impossible to match the days of the Red Hair pirates. Now that Crane has talked about this, the other Marines have nothing to say. Although the job title, Crane's job title is only Vice Admiral. But like Garp, as the pillar of Marine's older generation, Crane is a proper Marine high level. The status is higher than the current 3 admirals. When Garp didn't stand up and Sengoku didn't know whether he was alive or dead, Crane had the power to rule the whole situation. It's finally over, this war. On the pirate's side, the cyan flame wings in Marco's hand retracted and he recovered his arms, he was also relieved. There is a tight string on the Marine side, and the same is true on the pirate side. It would be best if he could safely evacuate with Ace. However, those wounded pirates can only save as much as they can. Is it finally over? On the Moby Dick, Nami breathed a sigh of relief. This level of war is no longer something small pirates like them can participate in. To put it bluntly, Nami's strength can't even defeat many small soldiers and pirates on this battlefield, so she has been staying on the Moby Dick. With Usopp guarding here, nothing can go wrong. However, her idea just came out. Boom. A shell exploded directly around the Moby Dick. What happened again? Nami said with a look of panic. Usopp's knowledge spread, and his gaze instantly looked towards the distant sea area behind him. It can already be seen there, the shadow of a huge warship. 3 warships sailed out of the fog on the sea. Standing on the prow of the warship in the middle was an extremely majestic and tall old man. The old man looked much older than Rayleigh. But he's muscular enough to ignore his age. And beside him stood a tall man with a mask and a huge white cloak covering his whole body. It's ugly, Sengoku, Garp, Crane. The old man's heroic laughter came from the warship in the distance, and it was conveyed to the port of Marineford. Here comes the troublesome guy. On the port, Whitebeard waved a transparent shock wave, forcing a group of Marines to retreat. Looking at the warship approaching in the distance, his face was slightly solemn. This voice, could it be? Rayleigh's face changed slightly when he heard the voice, as if he guessed who was coming. Brother Kong. Garp looked up sharply. This voice was all too familiar to him. Kong. The Marine Marshal 20 years ago is now the Commander-in-Chief of the world government. It seems that it was Mariajoy above who received the message from Marineford. After all, this is a war that will be broadcast live to the whole world. Mariajoy and the Western Army are at a disadvantage. The former Marshal Kong is here. The appearance of the sky made the Marine on the Marineford cheer loudly. Even Crane breathed a sigh of relief. She could see that the one standing next to Kong was obviously a master of CPO. Being able to stand next to the empty, at the moment sent to support Marineford, because the probability is a strong admiral level. Plus Kong. 2 admiral-level powerhouses, and then cooperate with their forces. There's every chance Whitebeard can stop their retreat. You must know that at this time, their top combat strength is actually only a little bit worse than that of the Whitebeard pirates. Pirates, are you getting carried away? Kong laughed. The body instantly disappeared from the warship. I only saw several white sonic boom clouds appearing in the sky. Kong's figure instantly appeared in front of Whitebeard. The majestic muscles spread out in midair, and the invisible Haki wrapped around his fists in large numbers. He punches Whitebeard straight in the face. Boom. The vibrating knife wave on Kong Yunchi, the supreme fast knife, directly collided with Kong's fist. Terrifying shock waves spread explosively around the port. Fortunately, Whitebeard has been standing at the forefront of the evacuation route, blocking Marine's attack. Therefore, there are not too many pirates around him, and he will not accidentally hurt too many of his own people at this moment. Cough. In the violent collision, Whitebeard took a slight step back. Kong, on the other hand, is still as imposing as a rainbow. This is not to say how strong Kong is, stronger than Garp. In fact, Kong has already started to decline due to his age, and he is even worse than Garp. However, Whitebeard's state at the moment is really bad. From the moment he stepped onto the battlefield, he has been using his will to forcibly mobilize his broken and sick body, and he has been fighting until now. Before Ace was rescued, he breathed a sigh of relief, but now the breath has not been brought up, and his body is slightly unable to keep up. Otherwise, with the state of forcibly overdrawing his body in the face of Garp before, he can knock Kong back. Oops, Dad is on the verge of reaching his limit. Marco is the one who knows Whitebeard's body the most, and at this moment, the anxious emotion is almost overflowing from his heart. It's a pity that the current him has no time to rush over. Ghost Chi, 9 swordsmanship, sleepless night, 1 mist of silver. The turbulent ghost energy extended on Zoro's body, like a giant Shira ghost. His condition is the best. Because between Hawkeye and him, the previous battle was just a competition of swordsmanship, without using much Haki and physical strength at all. Therefore, this moment is also his earliest reaction. The violent knife energy surged like a wave, and 9 knives slashed towards Luffy in an instant. A place where there were no people. In an instant, a man wearing a white cloak and a white mask appeared. Stab. The white cloak was torn apart by the knife energy. The turbulent sword waves slashed at the man's body, making the sound of gold and iron clanging. With the powerful armament Haki and the thick animal fur, Zoro's slash can only penetrate deep into the flesh, without breaking the bones in an instant. Marine. When did the people in Marine become so despicable? Zoro pressed down on the famous knife in his hand, and said calmly, "Want to sneak attack our captain?" This is the CPO guy. Rayleigh was next to him. He had dealt with the world government a lot, so he recognized the man's identity at a glance. It just made him a little puzzled. Under normal circumstances, people from the CPO are rarely dispatched, which is an important force to protect Mariajoy. Not to mention the one in front of him, he looks like an admiral-level powerhouse. They are the top ones in the CPO. Moreover, even if they want to show up and save the government's face, they should go for the Fire Fist Ace. But this man, it's like he's been staring at Luffy from the start. In other words, the task he received, the high-level order of the 5 elders, was to get rid of Luffy. Why exactly? Is there anything about Luffy that the 5 elders really care about? Rayleigh couldn't figure it out. In the end, he could only attribute it to the strength of the Straw Hat Pirates. The pirate group composed of young monsters of the new era made 5 elders deeply afraid. That's why I want to get rid of Luffy. It's just that Rayleigh, who is keen, always feels that something is not right. Clang. Zoro swung the famous sword vigorously. Rayleigh next to him also rushed over with his sword drawn. Seeing that the assassination failed, the CPO masked man didn't force his attack anymore, but disappeared in front of Zoro in a very witty manner. When it reappeared, it had already been pushed to Kong's side, like a shadow. Just when Whitebeard was confronting the Marine led by Sora with a serious face. Everyone frowned and looked up to the back of naval headquarters. What is that? Some Marine soldiers exclaimed. A huge shadow almost enveloped the entire naval headquarters. That's a human being. Nothing but a gigantic, unimaginable colossus. So big, even Luffy at this moment couldn't help but exclaim. It was really too big, his huge figure, even the tall naval headquarters, couldn't completely cover it. The Oz they met at the thriller barque was already very big. But 420 is Oz in front of this giant, just like a plush toy. The giant next to naval headquarters, even by visual inspection, has a height of 150 meters. Compared with little Ozzy of the Whitebeard pirates on the scene, he is worse than a baby. It's the San Juan Wolf. Their Marine Vice Admiral recognized the identity of the giant. This was once a notorious big pirate. Because the crimes he committed were too heavy, he was imprisoned in the eternal hell on the 6th floor underground of the Imper prison. A pirate who will be erased from history by the world government. And that one, Katarina Dupont, Chote the Barrel Basque, Avaro Pizarro, the villainous king. Each of them was a notorious big pirate, and each of them was a criminal who should be imprisoned in the Imper prison and could not come out for the rest of his life. However, at this moment, all of them appeared here. Why, the criminals from the 6th floor of the Impel prison appear here. Kong looked at these 6th-level criminals who appeared, and his face was also ugly. Some of them were arrested by him himself, but they were released at this moment. Of course, this is not the most dignified thing for Kong. The appearance of these people represented that the iron wall of the Imper prison, which was almost impossible to break through, had been broken. So, how many of those LV-6 pirates escaped? You know, compared with some pirates on the 6th floor, the few pirates that appear now can only be regarded as small ones. On the 6th floor, there are many pirates of the 4 Emperors Admiral level. It's Blackbeard. A voice familiar to all Marines sounded. Sengoku's clothes were torn, his upper body was bloody, and he walked towards this side, with an ugly expression on his face. When he appeared in the Whitebeard pirates, he received a report from his subordinates. Blackbeard plundered a warship, opened the gates of justice, and headed for the great prison of Imper. I thought that with Blackbeard's strength, Impel could not be broken with Magellan and Shiryu. Now it seems clear that things are in trouble. As expected of the resourceful General Sengoku, I really can't hide anything from you, thief, ha ha ha. A burst of wild laughter came from above the head of the huge battleship San Juan Wolf. Blackbeard's uncoordinated fat body jumped off the head of the San Juan Wolf with a group of people. Teach. The moment he saw Blackbeard, a silver-white light suddenly appeared in the depths of Whitebeard's pupils. The bright silver-white light is like a cursor. Whitebeard tightly clenched the naginata in his hand, his aura instantly broke through a limit, and his will once again surpassed the limit of his body. The terrifying aura made Kong not far away tremble. Teach. Ace gritted his teeth and looked at Blackbeard. But he didn't rush forward recklessly. After being in prison this time, his personality has also softened. He was very aware of his own importance at this moment, and he did not blindly put himself in danger. Let's deal with Whitebeard together, Marshal Sengoku, thief, ha ha ha. Blackbeard looked at Sengoku, exclaimed. Chapter 67. I come to end this war. Advertise here. Shiryu. Sengoku looked behind Blackbeard, the tall figure holding a famous sword. At this moment, he understood why, with Blackbeard's strength, he was able to pass through the deep-sea prison guarded by Magellan. If there is Shiryu, who is extremely powerful, as an internal response. Combined with the antidote developed inside Imper prison, it can indeed break through Magellan's defense. It's just that he doesn't know why Shiryu joined Blackbeard. It should be known that, as the warden of the Imper prison, Shiryu has hardly had any contact with the outside world, and they live in the Imper prison almost permanently. What exactly did Blackbeard tell him to make him abandon everything and follow Blackbeard? Hey, Marshal Sengoku, your eyes are dangerous enough. Shiryu was smoking a cigar, exhaling the smoke lightly, looking at Sengoku with a nonchalant expression on his face. Hey, Sengoku, don't look at us so dangerously, aren't we allies? Blackbeard laughed. Ally. Marine couldn't help laughing angrily, entered the Imper prison, released the prisoners, and now tell them that they are allies. A golden light began to emerge from Sengoku's body. Kong and Garp clenched their fists tightly, and their aura scattered like a storm. If it wasn't for the fact that Whitebeard and his gang were around, they might have attacked Blackbeard right now. Hey, I'm a Shichibukai anyway, Sengoku. Seeing the people on both sides looking at him with dangerous eyes, Blackbeard panicked for a moment, and quickly smiled and waved his hands to explain. What's more, what you need to do now is not to deal with Whitebeard and his gang. If you don't execute Ace, if you let him run away, you will have no way to explain to the whole world. My goal is also Whitebeard. Compared to solving me, shouldn't solving Whitebeard be the first priority? Thieves, ha ha ha. To be honest, the current Blackbeard is also in a panic. Under normal circumstances, according to his plan, he has an understanding of the strength of the two forces. At this time, the Whitebeard pirates should have been completely defeated, and Marine also suffered heavy losses. He should come out at this time to clean up the mess. But he didn't find out until he actually came out. The basic outcome is determined. But it was different from the defeat of the Whitebeard pirates he had expected. The Whitebeard pirates actually won. Not only has Ace been rescued, but it seems that the combat power has not been affected. Whitebeard, Rayleigh, these top combat forces, all have the power to fight. On the Marine side, Akainu is gone, Kizaru Aokiji, and Sengoku all look a bit embarrassed. This is completely different from what he expected. But fortunately, as a schemer and careerist, Blackbeard is still very intelligent and eloquent. In just a few words, Sengoku was somewhat convinced. Because what he said is indeed true. Sengoku was well aware of Blackbeard's current sin. However, the Impel prison has been breached, and the prisoners who should have escaped have already escaped, and it is too late to talk about that now. Moreover, the most important thing is that the matter of Imper prison can still be covered. After all, there are only so many people who know that the big prison has been breached. But the public execution of Fire Fist Ace is different now, this is a live broadcast to the whole world. Although the live phone bug has been cut off at this moment. But if Fire Fist Ace escapes, Marine will be completely disgraced. Not only is it impossible to explain to the people below, but it is even more difficult to explain to the world government above. So, right now, as Blackbeard said, dealing with Whitebeard is the most important thing. Moreover, the strength of Blackbeard's side is very good, and they can indeed cooperate. It's just that there are still many things that Marine can't accept, especially Garp. To be honest, Sengoku doesn't like to cooperate with Blackbeard either. At this moment, the air on the battlefield was a little stagnant. There are many things that Sengoku needs to consider, and this cannot be solved simply by cooperation. Instead, it is empty. The strong CPO man was holding a phone bug and talking in a respectful low voice. A few minutes later, the strong CP0 whispered something next to Sora. I agree, your name is Blackbeard, isn't it? Sora stepped forward with a majestic body, and said loudly, it's not cooperation, Blackbeard, as a Shichibukai, you have the obligation to respond to the compulsory call and participate in the war. Now, the order from the government calls you to take action against the Whitebeard pirates. Sora's voice made Sengoku, Garp, and Crane present frown. But after all, he didn't say anything more. They are very clear that this is an order passed down from above. It's really a high-sounding reason, it's really the style of those corrupt superiors, chatter chatter. Doflamingo laughed mockingly. It's not about me anymore, I've done what I need to do. With the big black sword on his back, Hawkeye turned and walked away from the battlefield. He no longer has any interest in this war. It's exactly what I want, just to make a break, teach. Whitebeard's gaze was very cold, silvery white rays of light gathered in his pupils, and the naginata in his hand was pierced straight into the sky, his aura almost condensed to ultimate. It's like returning to the peak of him when he was young. The spirit of the strongest man in the world. Dad is really angry. Joes whispered. That terrifying aura made Whitebeard's body almost emit white steam. That is the white steam coming out of the real body functioning to the limit, the blood boiling and flowing rapidly. It's like Luffy's second gear stimulates blood flow, it makes sense. Even during his previous fight with Garp, Whitebeard hadn't reached this stance. It's not that I'm clumsy, it's that I can't reach it. But at this moment, Ultimate's anger made him completely burn his life, reaching such a terrifying level. Are you going to fight again? Kizaru sighed inwardly, but lifted his spirits. It's almost there, pineapple head. Luffy took a breath, and said to Marco who was treating him with resurrecting Chingyan. He gently pushed Marco away and stood up. The liberating heartbeat sounded like a war drum again, and abundant physical strength seemed to appear in the body out of thin air. Luffy's shriveled body instantly filled up, and the gentle white light bloomed on his body again. He entered that godlike posture again. Stride forward. Luffy stood next to Whitebeard. Behind him, Zoro, Sanji, and Chopper followed silently. In addition, Usopp has appeared in this port at some time, standing behind Luffy, holding a huge slingshot, looking coldly at the sniper of the Blackbeard pirates opposite. Little ghost, take Ace away, you have reached your limit. Whitebeard's pupils slanted down slightly, looked at Luffy, and said in a low voice. You are the one, uncle, you are in pain right now, your painful emotions are too obvious in my experience, so let's back away. Luffy pressed the straw hat and said with a calm smile. HMPH, what an unlovable brat, this little injury, let me back down, you are 100 years too early, gurgling. Whitebeard laughed like no one else. The atmosphere of the entire battlefield condensed into substance. No one shot first. Both parties present are very clear, once again manman. There is no room for recovery, so it is really a desperate fight. Moreover, the two sides face each other, and no one is sure. Just when everyone's hearts have collapsed into a string and are about to break. A warship in the distance was so fast that it broke through the circle of the warship and the pirate ship of the Whitebeard pirates. The entire warship rushed ashore as if out of control, and hit the protective wall, setting off a huge cloud of smoke and dust. Hey, Buggy, how do you steer the boat? Why do you lose control? A strong and domineering voice resounded in the smoke and dust. Ah, how can I be blamed for this? The old man obviously accelerated too much, how can I control such a fast speed? Being able to rush to the island is already a great success. A slightly shrill voice sounded, with panic. Do you want to die? Red-nosed brat. This is an old voice, when this voice full of vicissitudes sounds. The legends of the old era who were present couldn't help frowning. All too familiar, this voice. Where is this going, Mr. One? There was another gloomy voice. Here Zoro and Sanji looked at each other thoughtfully. This voice is familiar to them. It is the crocodile of Alabasta. Boom. The majestic figure waved his hand violently in the smoke and dust, as if a hurricane had been blown out of thin air, and the smoke and dust were blown away instantly. The figure on the warship that had just rushed to Marineford also completely appeared in front of everyone. Are you, Bullet? Rayleigh looked at the tallest and most majestic figure among them, and said in surprise. Long time no see, Deputy Captain Rayleigh. Bullet showed a somewhat ferocious smile, his eyes burning fiercely. He has practiced in the big prison for so many years, and after he came out, he couldn't wait to find a strong person to practice his hands. Rayleigh was a perfect fit in his opinion. At the age of 15, he joined the Luogia pirates and fought to a tie with the Deputy Captain Rayleigh. But in fact, Bullet knew very well that Rayleigh had kept his hands on him at the time, so now he is eager to use Rayleigh to judge the results of his exercise. Whitebeard. And Crocodile saw Whitebeard, and there was an inexplicable emotion in his eyes. Executive Captain Rayleigh, I miss you so much. Standing among a group of bosses, Buggy, who was trembling with fear, saw Rayleigh in the crowd, as if seeing a savior. Hastily flew over. The levitating body hugged Rayleigh's neck, almost crying. This group of people is too strong, so strong that it makes him feel scared. Fortunately, there is Rayleigh, the gentle mate, enough to shelter his little cadet crew. Long time no see, Buggy. Luffy laughed. It's you, Straw Hat. When Buggy saw Luffy, who was greeting with a smile, he went up angrily and grabbed Luffy by the collar. All because of this rubber bastard. Not this rubber bastard, he would not be caught and tortured in the big prison of Impel. And you two bastards. Buggy also sees Zoro and Sanji. And the two of them just buttoned their boogers and looked at Buggy with disgust. Unexpectedly, there is still a come one day, I will see the faces of you two bastards again. Quote. You two, I thought you were dead long ago. Whitebeard looked at the old man in front of him with disgust. Burndy World. This world destroyer, who went to sea with Luogia earlier and became famous earlier, is also a legendary pirate in the old sea. Be feared by the world government. In the end, Marine even teamed up with the pirates to deal with him, and then disappeared. Whitebeard had always thought he was dead. From now on, it is obvious that Marine was imprisoned silently in the Impel prison. World Destroyer, Burndy World. Successor of the Ghost, Douglas Bullet. Ex-Shichibukai, Crocodile. Everyone is a well-known pirate figure, why do they appear here? Marine's elite vice admirals shouted out the names of several people who appeared on this battlefield in shock. The more I think about it, the more hopeless I feel. Of the three, Crocodile is better. Those two are true legends. World Destroyer Burndy World, a legendary pirate who became famous earlier than Whitebeard and Rayleigh, can also be said to be a strong player at the same level as Whitebeard and Rayleigh. Douglas Bullet, the successor of the Ghost, was once hailed as Luogia's successor. At the age of 15, he was already able to draw with Rayleigh. Now so many years have passed. He has grown into a mature man completely, and no one knows what his real strength is. These two people are not comparable to those rotten fish and rotten shrimps brought out by Blackbeard before. These two, either one, could easily beat up those rotten fish and rotten shrimps on the 6th floor around Blackbeard. That's not a level at all. They were kept on the 6th floor only because the Impel prison only had 6 floors. Like Burndy World, it was conquered by the world and put into a big prison, and it was permanently frozen. Looks like you're lucky. Just after you got out of prison, you encountered a big scene, Valorolo. World looked at all the Marines on the opposite side, opened his mouth with few teeth and laughed loudly. Although you are an annoying guy, Whitebeard, you are much cuter than the running dog of the world government across the way. Shut up, World, if you talk nonsense again, I'll shake you into the sea. Whitebeard glanced at World in disgust, and said in a low voice. Compared to Captain Rayleigh's words, I am more excited to defeat Marine. Bullet grinned. The majestic muscles stretched out, and Rayleigh, who was standing beside him, couldn't help but stare at him with a terrifying aura. The terrifying aura that Bullet is showing at this moment, Nuo-Lee's, has surpassed him now. The genius boy back then had indeed grown to a level that shocked everyone. Blackbeard, you bastard. Sengoku can't wait to tear Blackbeard right now. Opening the prison of Impel, just for the sake of the few rotten fish and rotten shrimps around him, the real monsters were released. Douglas Bullet, Burndy World, that's the guy that's giving them a lot of headaches. To be honest, the strength of Blackbeard, the pirate group, and their blessings, compared with the two legendary monsters on the opposite side, plus a former Shichibukai, are too far behind. Thief ha ha ha. Blackbeard chuckled softly. But to be honest, things have developed to such an extent that they are completely out of his control. The Whitebeard pirates rescued Ace, the first he didn't expect. The second one is the bastard's Bullet, who came out of the big prison and came to Marineford by mistake. Now things are really difficult. In terms of combat power on paper alone, Marine has already fallen into a disadvantage. And the situation was worse than Blackbeard's imagination, obviously. In the distance, a red ship approaches Marineford at breakneck speed. This is a pirate ship. On the dragon's head and the sail is a skull crossed by 2 knives. There are 3 red scars on the left eye of the skull. This pirate ship is not big. It can be regarded as a medium-sized ship. Compared with the warship and the pirate ship of the Whitebeard pirate group, it is much different in size. However, no matter who it is, no one can underestimate this ship. Because, this ship is the main ship of the 4 emperors, the red-haired Shanks pirate group. Red Force. It's over. Sengoku closed his eyes when he saw the ship. He knew very well that this top battle was over. Marine, complete defeat. After a while, the main ship of the 4 emperors Shanks docks. A one-armed man with red hair set foot on the land of Marineford. I'm here to end this war. Chapter 68 Blackbeard, the end. Advertise here. Boom. The huge Conqueror's Haki swept the entire Marineford like a storm. The terrifying Haki is enough to change the color of the whole world. This is Haki from the redhead Shanks. With the Conqueror's Haki, a man who can stand firmly on the top of the sea even if his body is disabled. Shanks. Bullet's expression changed, he was slightly surprised, and then looked at Shanks with a slightly ferocious smile. I haven't seen you for decades. That little brat has grown to this level now. After spending so much time on the 6th floor of Impel's Great Prison, Bullet has no idea what the so-called 4 emperors are. However, Just from the courage of Shanks, it is enough to prove that the former trainee crew member is now a well-known big man in the sea. Let's be honest, Bullet has a sense of being different. But it's more about excitement. The flaming fighting spirit kept expanding in his chest. In the world decades later, there seemed to be more strong people. End the war. Stop talking big, red-haired brat. Holding his thick arms, Sora scolded because of the sound. Where did you put the face of the Marine and the world government? Your face is not worth mentioning, empty. The red-haired eyes were as sharp as swords out of their scabbards, and they had just fought Kaido, one of the 4 emperors. And successfully forced Kaido back. The vigor of the whole body at this moment is simply terrifying to the extreme. Even Kong, the commander-in-chief of the entire army, was shocked by the red-haired courage in an instant. The war should stop. The redhead looked serious, looked at the people on both sides, and the devastated battlefield, and said loudly. In this war, no matter whether it is the winner or the loser, the final result cannot be changed. Continuing to fight will only make the casualties of both sides even more tragic. Open your eyes and look at this battlefield full of mourning. Your comrades and partners are lying on the ground at this moment, dying. Is this the reason you want to continue fighting? Give me face and stop fighting here. The Whitebeard pirates collect the wounded and return to New World. Marine can also take advantage of the present to save those Marine soldiers who can still be rescued. The redhead's words made both sides fall into silence. Especially Whitebeard, this one. His conceited character hates little ghosts gesticulating in front of him. But now, he couldn't refute the redhead's words. He is the most affectionate existence among Whitebeard and 4 emperors. Relying on the fetters of his family, he established the largest pirate group. But, to be honest, this time I came here for selfish reasons. Because Ace is Luojia's son, his son, and most importantly, he is regarded as the successor, the son of the will inheritor. So, he has a preference for Ace. Under this preference, let him bring all the members of the Whitebeard pirates to Marineford to fight desperately. For this, he has already killed too many children. Therefore, he will not say anything to continue the war at this moment. He will not regard the pirates under his command as cannon fodder for war. It's like, he is ready to die in this war at any time. The same goes for Marine. Sengoku is not a hawk, in fact, he is more of a dove, but in many cases, the implementation of government orders is too tough. He also couldn't treat soldiers as cannon fodder to fill the battlefield. Not to mention, at this moment, Marine's defeat has been sealed. Look at the monsters on the opposite side. The Straw Hat Pirates are strong enough to resist Admiral's 4 great powers. Whitebeard, Pluton Rayleigh, Douglas Bullet, Bond World. These are all the most terrifying monsters standing on the top of the sea. And now come the Red Hair Pirates. Don't look at his neutral posture now. However, you must know that Fire Fist Ace is the blood of Luojia, and Shanks has received a lot of favors from Luojia. If you really fight, Red Hair Pirates, definitely on Whitebeard's side. 4 Emperors Pirates, a monster pirate group of the new era that is not inferior to the 4 Emperors Pirates, plus the legendary pirates who escaped from the big prison of Mupel. Where are the odds for Marine? Sengoku is a little desperate, unless the world government sends out all its forces. Fight a war of destruction that sweeps the entire world. Otherwise, even with Marine's full strength, the group in front of him, which has gathered the top combat power of most pirates in the sea, cannot compete at all. I promise, Redhead, Sengoku said loudly. Hello, Sengoku. Mr. Sengoku. Sora and the other top Marines looked at Sengoku in astonishment and said. They knew very well when Sengoku said such things in front of everyone. It is equivalent to Marine and world government, bowing their heads to pirates. Not only that, but the result of Sengoku will not be too good given the urine nature of the above world government. Needless to say, I will bear all the responsibility for this defeat. Sengoku said loudly, suppressing the voices of all the people. The war has reached this level, which is not what we thought, but the result is the result. Continuing to fight will only increase casualties. Hurry up and treat the wounded soldiers. The war is over. Sengoku waved his hands and ordered loudly. I agree too. Whitebeard said in a low voice. Our goal in this war has been achieved, and there is really no need to continue. The redhead breathed a sigh of relief at Whitebeard's words. He was really afraid that this stubborn and conceited old man would continue to fight on his own way. To be honest, that was definitely not what he wanted to see. Everyone's will is different. The will of the redhead and Whitebeard is different. At least for now, it seems that he doesn't want to destroy the fragile balance maintained by the major forces in the world. Even on the same side as Whitebeard. This will not change one bit. However, I have one condition. Whitebeard clenched the naginata tightly, the silver-white light in his eyes was dazzling, making people feel fearful at a glance. Even Admiral, 4 Emperors is the same. This is the pressure that the strongest man in the world used to use his last life to reach the peak. What? Whitebeard's words made Sengoku, who had just relaxed his body, tense up instantly, and said to Whitebeard with a serious face. Now it's Sengoku who is panicking, he's really afraid that Whitebeard will go to war regardless. Then, most of Marine's top combat power may really be lost here today. The war is over, but the internal affairs of the Whitebeard pirates are not over yet. It's none of your business. I have to take Blackbeard away. Whitebeard said loudly, His eyes were covered with a layer of haze, and his face was heavy and terrifying, like ghosts and gods. After all, everything now. The huge loss of the Whitebeard pirates is all caused by the bastard Teach-killing sage. It wasn't that Blackbeard killed Thatch, and Ace, who was on good terms with Thatch, wouldn't single-handedly go to Teach to clean up the house. They will not be captured by Marine, let alone this war. Once a war starts, there are no winners. The goal of the Whitebeard pirates has been achieved, but so many children have completely fallen in this war. Teach. Whitebeard walked slowly towards Blackbeard, his voice low and full of horror and oppression. Almost everyone could feel the wrath on Whitebeard, as if screwed into substance. Hey, Sengoku, I'm a Shichibukai appointed by the world government, and an ally with Marine. Blackbeard looked at Sengoku and shouted, while stepping back step by step. However, Sengoku just glanced at Whitebeard solemnly, and said loudly, Teach, you, as a Shichibukai, refuse to accept the government's compulsory summoning, attack warships, and release the criminals in Impel's prison. Starting today, you will be completely kicked out of Shichibukai's ranks and deprived of all your Shichibukai's rights. Sengoku didn't say anything else, but his words clearly showed Marine's attitude. As for Blackbeard, a double-faced villain who repeatedly backstabs, Sengoku and other Marine executives can't stand it at all. Although under normal circumstances, the appointment and abolition of Shichibukai are generally decided by the higher government 5 elders. But now Sengoku has nothing to fear. Anyway, after this war, his position as Marine Marshal will definitely be gone, and he is also tired, and he doesn't want to continue working in this position. Therefore, it is better to take all the responsibilities. Be it the failure issue, the compromise with Marine, or Shichibukai's Blackbeard issue, in short, he has already done it. If those bastards over at the 5 elders are not happy, let them come to Marineford now and make a statement. To be honest, once he started to feel bad in his heart, Sengoku instantly felt the burden that made him breathless CGCB disappear. It doesn't matter who you love, you can do whatever you want. That bastard Whitebeard is clearly ready to go all out now, and whoever wants to go all out with him should go all out. Teach, you put me on board. The only sin that cannot be forgiven is killing your companions. I should have taught you this principle. Teach. Whitebeard's voice seemed to be squeezed out from between his teeth. For this former son, the son who has followed him for decades, at this moment, he is full of disgust and anger. It's terrible, that monster. Kizaru couldn't help but said. Now Whitebeard has a kind of courage and history that anyone can fear when they see it. But it doesn't matter to others. At this moment, they are happy to watch the show. A villain like Blackbeard, everyone wanted to look at him, but was smashed by the angry Whitebeard. And Blackbeard, who was facing him directly, was breaking out in cold sweat at this moment. Hey, Dad, I'm your son. Blackbeard said loudly in fear. And Whitebeard has already raised his fist high, and the white spherical halo of air shock instantly enveloped his fist. Boom. However, with one punch, a scene that surprised everyone happened. Blackbeard, who was still terrified just now, actually blocked Sunbird's attack head-on at this moment. The ominous and deep darkness condensed on Blackbeard's palm like Uzumaki, easily absorbing Whitebeard's air shock wave. Be careful, Dad, Blackbeard's ability can completely nullify the ability of the capable person. Ace shouted loudly beside him. And Blackbeard's expression at the moment, already. From panic to pride. How about it, Dad, the ability of my dream dark fruit, thief ha ha ha. Blackbeard laughed loudly, pinching Whitebeard's forearm forcefully, the fingertips surging with darkness. Any capable person will lose their ability in front of my dark fruit, you have already. Can't make an earthquake, Dad. Quote. After speaking, Blackbeard directly punched Whitebeard hard in the stomach. It can be clearly seen that Blackbeard's physical skills are not weak, at least in terms of strength, he is very strong. Even with such a majestic and huge body as Whitebeard, his body was slightly vacated by his beating. Dad was actually hit head-on. How is that possible? Marco, who knew Whitebeard's strength, said in shock with disbelief on his face. Calm down, pineapple head. Luffy looked at Whitebeard with a calm smile on his face and said, that Uncle Whitebeard is not easy to deal with. What a pompous brat. Burndy World smiled cruelly. What kind of monster did he think he was facing? He has never fought against Whitebeard, and if he only judges Whitebeard's strength based on his own imagination, he will only suffer. He has seen too many of this kind of kid who gets carried away with a powerful ability by accident. Bullet on the side also looked at Blackbeard with a mocking face. Only Blackbeard didn't know it, still immersed in the emotions that suppressed Whitebeard. Boom, hum. As if Whitebeard didn't know Blackbeard's ability, he punched and punched in the air. Then he was absorbed by Blackbeard, and finally punched him heavily. Finally, after being hit 2 or 3 times, Whitebeard's eyes changed instantly. Ended. A red light flashed in Luffy's eyes, and he said with a smile, that uncle, what a monster. Next moment, boom. The blade of the supreme sharp knife, Kong Yun, shone with a frightening coldness under his eyes. The huge slash struck Blackbeard's body in an instant, causing him to be torn apart in an instant. Huge wounds appeared on Blackbeard's body, blood spattering. Ah, it hurts, bastard. Blackbeard rolled on the ground in pain. Dark Fruit's double pain caused him, who was not very strong-willed, to lose consciousness almost instantly. However, if it weren't for Dark Fruit's ability to absorb damage. The powerful and heavy knife just now is matched with the sharpness of the supreme sharp knife. Even with the armed body armor, Blackbeard was cut in two. Bang bang. In the case that Blackbeard didn't react at all. A pair of big feet directly stepped his palm into the ground, and the other palm was completely nailed to the ground by Kong Yunch. Reckless, conceited, teach, this is your greatest weakness. Whitebeard grabbed Blackbeard's neck directly on the ground. The few collisions just now were just for him to test Blackbeard's ability to release the position, and then in an instant, he completely subdued Blackbeard. Blackbeard's strength is not weak. But, to be honest, if it weren't for Dark Fruit's ability, he couldn't even make a move in front of the enraged Whitebeard. Captain Teach. Seeing that Blackbeard was subdued by one move, the members of the Blackbeard pirates, who were watching the battle not far away, panicked instantly. They rushed up one by one, like a beating. It's just that they seem to have forgotten. Among the many forces in the arena, only they are the weakest. Give it to me, get the hell out of Daddy's side. Fire punch. Phoenix seal. Boom. Two flames exploded in front of Whitebeard, forming a thick wall of fire. The blazing high temperature rushed towards the face, blocking all attacks. Marco and Ace, cyan and buff flames, were burning blazingly on their bodies. The two of them stood in front of Whitebeard, all members of the Blackbeard pirates immediately. Shiryu of the Rain drew his sword, but rows of cold lights appeared in his peripheral vision. One was directly in front of his toes, drawing a deep ravine. If you dare to draw your sword against your father, you will die here. Vista has two knives in his hands, and the knives are raging all over his body. A huge shadow looms behind him at this moment. Shiryu turned around slowly with an ugly face. Behind them is a group of Marine's top fighters, watching them eagerly. Everyone's face seemed to be shrouded in shadow. At this moment, the members of the Blackbeard pirates fully remembered. If the identity of the Marine ally is removed, their true identities are just escaped prisoners. Criminals have come to Marine's lair. And it's when Marine's full combat power is at hand.